Phil's in Godalming. Phil, what would you like to say?
Hi, good morning, James.
Hello.
For me, this is really, it's a big smoke screen, but I would, I'm going to have the temerity to say that I honestly believe that this is, you said we've been in for a 5-year sleep. Well, we have, and it's a sleep I hate to say that I think people like yourself have caused in many respects. Because, well, I sit very, very much in the centrist position. I'm a member of a very progressive pan-European political party. I fully accept that, there are problems with migration. And I think that that's where I'm coming from, because I genuinely believe that the liberal left, well, not so much, but just the over-liberal.
Well, can you just tell me what those words mean?
Right. Okay. People like yourself.
Well, that doesn't tell me what the words mean. What do the words mean when you use them?
Liberal, in the sense of basically wanting, full human rights at every stage of political engagement,
but only for humans,
which is ideal. Don't get me wrong; it's an ideal, but it's a false ideal, and that it can not possibly reach. So
what can't we reach?
People like yourself,
I am going to insist that you explain the words that you use, because you've made it about me.
All I'm saying is I'm saying liberal people have swept.
Yes, but you haven't told me what liberal means, except
under the carpet.
No, we never talk about anything else, Phil.
No.
I'm
sorry. You swept it under the carpet.
We haven't swept it under the carpet, Phil. In fact, today, the phone in today...
That is not a problem.
No one said there isn't a problem. There are people drowning in the English Channel, Phil. That's about as big a problem as humanity can conceive of.
That is a huge problem, I agree.
So what does liberal mean, Phil? My centrist friend.
Okay. Overly liberal, James.
Well, you can't tell me what overly liberal means unless you tell me what does liberal mean.
That someone who is concerned about non-cultural immigration, if you like.
What does that mean? What does non-cultural mean?
I mean, James, if I'm literally having to explain everything I say to you, but you do this, and this is your, mode, of operation.
Well, then you knew what to expect. You must have given it some thought before you rang in. You can't tell me what liberal means. What does non-cultural mean?
It means, if people, say, for example, I have a Polish family live next door.
Yes.
I might even not know that they're a Polish family because they blend in.
But they speak Polish.
Now, if you have people
they speak
who
Polish.
do not blend in, for whatever, it could be any European migratory family, if you like, or whatever,
right.
or community. It doesn't matter. The point is they blend in.
How do they blend in? They've got their own shops.
Because you don't notice them. James, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is the problem. You can't see the problem you create.
What is the problem with non-Polish immigrants?
I don't know, you had a conversation with a Christian who objected, to homosexual issues and blah, blah, blah. And you went through Leviticus and Numbers.
That's correct,
pointing out, well, why don't you accept that? You would never do that with the Quran.
Oh, I have done it with the Quran.
No, you haven't.
Yes, no, I have. I think the best example... Phil, why? I mean, you must appreciate, Phil, it's turning into a game of... It's turning into a game of gammon bingo, this, mate. So just pause and listen for a minute. I'll tell you...
Huge difference, sir.
House. So I think the best example I can give you is when people were complaining about the Quran being set fire to, I asked a caller if he would object to someone having it on their computer and pressing delete, and the consequences were similarly hilarious to a Christian trying to use Leviticus. So,
and a while ago you also went on about someone who was objecting to Islamic practices, and you made a conversation. His name was Richard, and you brought in the sock guy on the plane.
That was nearly 10 years ago.
Every person who is James. You are.
That was nearly 10 years ago, Phil.
Deny that, but it's obfuscation.
So here we are on the radio. Talking about why the country has spent all week talking about Gary Lineker, and you've come on and said it's because there are people that don't blend in.
No, I've said it's because people in the media will not acknowledge...
What does blend in mean?
We almost Brexited, because you drove swathes of people, normal people, who were just concerned about immigration.
Right.
You drove them into the hands of the extremists.
Okay.
And that is the problem. And that is the problem across politics.
But extremists use language like blend in, don't they?
Are toxic toxic.
Phil, I'm going to keep you on the line until I can get a word in edgeways, and I'm going to insist that you explain the language that you've used. So I want to know what it is about a Polish family moving in next door that lets them blend in the way that... Well, what families don't blend in, Phil?
Well, I'd be absolutely honest. I would not like a trenchant Islamic family moving in next to me.
And how would you know? How would you know the depth of their religious beliefs?
I know the culture, James, and this is the problem.
But how would you spot it, Phil?
That there is a genuine issue. What about what
would it be, Phil? Again, I need to ask you some more. I need to ask you some more questions, Phil. We're talking about you and your imaginary neighbours, all right? So we can go back over my greatest hits of gammon baiting if you want, but I think it would be boring for people who haven't spent as much time watching my YouTube clips as you have, which is considerably more time than I have, actually. So what is it about your imaginary Muslim neighbours? What do they do that makes them undesirable neighbours for you?
Because, look, there is a cultural difference.
But my questions are really straightforward, and everybody else, everybody can hear me talking. What do they do, these imaginary neighbours, that makes them undesirable?
Well, they're imaginal. So how they're, as you said, they're imaginary. So how can I really state exactly what I'm saying?
Because you know that you don't want to live next door to them. What is it that these imaginary neighbours do that you're confident a Polish family would never do? You know there are Polish Muslims.
Well, do
they blend in,
James? That doesn't make the point.
Do they blend in, though? Do the Polish Muslims?
Anything about their Bible?
You keep talking, Phil.
It is the fanatics in all these situations that steal the show, because they are.
Do Polish Muslims blend in, Phil?
Don't care. But if you do not acknowledge,
the Polish Muslims blend in, Phil.
A large swathe of the silent majority who are.
Do Polish Muslims blend in, Phil?
Pardon?
Do Polish Muslims blend in?
It all depends whether they were abiding by, strict Islamic practices.
And how would you tell? How would you tell? How would you tell that? How could you tell that? But just from living next door to them.
I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, James. This is quite ridiculous.
Mate, you've come on the radio and talked to me about people you wouldn't want to live next door to, and I'm asking why. Why, Phil?
I am totally...
What would the neighbours do? What would the imaginary neighbours do that would make them undesirable?
Bone in my body, but I am culturalist, James.
Say that again.
I'm not prepared.
Say that bit again about the racist bone in your body, because some people missed it.
I don't have a racist bone in my body.
But you don't want to live next door to brown people.
No, I do have a culturalist bone in my body, James.
Culturalist? What does that word mean?
Culture.
No, culturalist, you said.
Well, as in racist, James, for goodness sake. I'm just using
exactly,
it in the same manner.
Yes, exactly, you are. You're not supposed to say that bit out loud.
What?
Well, that you're basically being a racist, but calling it culturalist instead.
No, I'm not being a racist. There is a huge difference.
Right, so what would these people do that makes them undesirable neighbours, Phil?
See that, then it's your
you can show me, Phil. They're living next door to you. They're living next door to you, Phil.
James.
What are they doing? What are they doing that makes them undesirable neighbours, Phil? Apart from being brown.
Well, look, let me just shift it a little bit.
I wish you'd answer one of my questions. You don't know what liberal means.
I'm trying to answer it, but you won't.
Well, what do they do? No, you just literally said, let me shift it. That's not answering, that's shifting it, Phil. These are your words that I'm playing back to you. What do the imaginary neighbours do?
Look, I'm fortunate enough to live in a very kind of typical, English, small town.
What does English mean?
I don't have to suffer. I don't have to suffer cultural, if you like, shocks on my doorstep.
Like what?
Well, I don't. I mean, I'm being absolutely honest. I don't want to see women having to, cover up.
Right.
No Western woman naturally covers up.
What if they're Polish?
And we wonder why these other women do.
What if they're Polish?
That is cultural, essentially, indoctrination. And if you can't recognise that, that is the problem.
Well, it's not a problem. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of face veils, but I wouldn't have a problem living next door to somebody who wanted to wear one any more than I'd have a problem living next door to someone who wants to wear flip-flops.
Well, it probably would matter how many were there, James, and just how religiously, if you like, they abided by their doctrine.
Okay.
I mean,
So it's the face masks and
the point is, you will not acknowledge that people do have a concern about that.
I acknowledge it by asking what the concern is, Phil, and now we've got there now. You don't want to live next to women who wear face veils.
I don't want to live in a country where women are subjugated. No, I don't.
No, so you want to introduce laws. You want to introduce laws telling them what they can and can't wear.
Is quite staggering.
There's no cognitive dissonance here, Phil. What would you do?
I'm not saying for 1 minute that all Muslims are, like that, but the fanatics
like what, Phil?
As in the Christian fanatics.
Like what, Phil?
What do you mean, like what?
You said, I'm not saying... Well, this is just the strangest conversation. You keep saying things. You said, I'm not for one moment saying that all Muslims are like that. And I said, like what, Phil? And you said, what do you mean, like what? How can you not understand? Just calm down a bit, Phil. Slow down.
There are a lot of Christians and a lot of Muslims who you would not know they were Christian or Muslim.
Right.
That's the point. There are an awful
So they're blending in.
They're nominal.
They're blending in.
Nominal. They're blending, they're nominal. And this is what causes people, stress. Because
face veils.
We all conform. We all try. There is a norm, and that's another thing. The norm has been lost.
Yes.
There is a norm.
Can you describe the norm to me, Phil?
Yes.
Good.
The norm is, like, for example, at a school, the norm is a school, outfit. School uniform. That's a norm.
So you want everyone to dress the same?
No.
So what's the norm, Phil?
But if you
slow down a little bit.
If you studied standard deviation, you'd see that the norm encompasses quite a range. But it's the standard deviation. Okay?
What's the norm?
And outside of that, there are the extremes.
Phil, this doesn't make sense. What is the norm?
No, I know. Okay, James, it doesn't make sense to you, but that is the problem.
What is the norm?
And you cause the problem.
I cause the problem. What's the norm, Phil? What's the norm, Phil?
That there are perfectly decent
Phil, stop repeating yourself and tell me what some of these words mean.
About immigration.
What does the norm mean?
The norm is what people feel, comfortable. And I would not consider, skinheads in bother boots the norm in dressing in society. Okay. That kind of wear I would not consider the norm in English society.
Right. That doesn't help me much.
That's an extreme. No, it doesn't. But the point is, the norm is broad.
Well, what is it then? Just put it into English words.
James, I'm not going to go down this. I know what I'm saying.
You keep objecting to me, asking you the meaning of the words you use. So what's the norm? So let me run through some of the words that you've used. All right, people should blend in more. Polish people are all right, but Muslim people aren't.
No, you're putting words into my mouth.
No, these are all words you've said.
I'm quite sure I didn't say they should blend in more. I said, this is what, all I said is people,
there's a tape.
If you blend in, then you're not so...
Then you can live next door to Phil. If you blend in, you can live next door to Phil.
Justifiable.
You keep interrupting me when I'm interrupting you. I'm running through the words that you've used. You definitely used the phrase blend in. Can we agree about that?
I probably did use it, but not in the sense that you just used it.
Okay, so what sense did you use it? What sense did you use it in, Phil?
Well, I'm saying if you blend in, you are not noticed. That's the point.
Yeah, so what does it mean, blending in?
Like, I've lived in 4 different countries in my life.
Can I give you a tiny little bit of advice? Would you mind?
Yes,
because I think obsess a little bit less about people who are trying to promote harmony. Try not to be so frightened of things.
That's my argument.
No, it's not, Phil.
You think
no, it's not. No. You want everyone to blend in, Phil. You want everyone to blend in. Just relax, seriously. Pay attention. This comes from a place of love. You've said yourself that you're nowhere near all of the things.
Guy, James.
Well, you said you were a centrist.
You're hilarious. You're hilarious.
All of the things that you said yourself you have no personal exposure to, you don't need to be frightened of.
James, all I'm saying is,
everyone's heard you, Phil. Everyone's heard everything you've said. I'm just telling you, you don't need to be so scared.
You just answer me one question now, James.
I'll try.
Just imagine that we were nuked. Britain was nuked.
Oh, my
or a
days.
large part of Britain was nuked. And we had to go overseas when we'd hoped that other countries would open up their borders to allow us in.
Yes.
Okay? Now, tell me, would you go to a theocracy?
Would I go to a
be honest.
theocracy?
Yes, would you go to Afghanistan? Would you go to
I'd go where I speak the language. I don't know what point you think you're making. I'd go to Australia because I've got friends there.
That question. You just answer that question, okay? Just tell me, and then tell me why would you make that decision? If you had a choice,
stop
James,
talking and let me answer. Let me answer the question. I'd go wherever was safe.
Yes. Well, okay, fine. You'd go wherever you're safe. But given a choice, where would you go? You've got a choice of Europe, or you've got a choice of going to Iran.
Greece. I'd go to Greece. I'd go to Greece.
Other countries.
I'd
Where
go
would you
to
go?
Greece.
You'd go to Greece.
Yeah.
They're not a bad place. I would kind of agree with that.
What are we talking about now, Phil? What do you think we're talking about now?
I'm just trying to point out in the most simplistic terms something that you resolutely refuse to acknowledge.
What am I resolutely refusing to acknowledge?
There are cultural differences, and in some countries the main cultural driver, if you like, is religion. And that causes an awful... And if you don't mind saying, before Brexit,
Greece is
the issue of immigration was totally conflated because most people...
There's an awful lot going on in your head, and I don't...
immigration from Europe.
Phil.
They were concerned about immigration from outside of Europe.
Well, why did they vote to leave Europe then?
Because it was totally conflated by people like you who made out.
But I was constantly pointing it out, Phil. I mean, you know my viral clips. You watch them on YouTube. You remember the guy who rang in to say that. Phil,
I've said what I said, and you can rubbish it for all you want. But I know
I haven't rubbished anything you've said, Phil. All I've done. Yes, I know you are, Phil. Yes, and I hope all your neighbours may all your neighbours blend in, Phil.
You are a sanctimonious person. You really are.
May all your neighbours blend in.
Yep, and yours. Bye-bye.
Love to the family. Hamar is in Wimbledon. Hamar, what do you think?
Well, I think he's left the institution, left the country, so it really doesn't make any difference, his approach of coming across and saying, look, this is me, this is my story, this is what I've had to do. He's left. He's left the institution, he's left the country. The only reason he's doing it is because he has to sell the books to make money. And
technically he doesn't, of course, because the advance would have been immense. I very much doubt, even if it becomes the best-selling book in history, that it will actually move into royalty territory. The advance is already in the bank.
Agreed, but this is not going to stop here, is it? He needs to make an income going forward. He can't just stop here with his.
Well, he's
media,
got many other plates spinning. Let me just back up a bit because I'm a bit confused by your opening. Let's talk about each other. So if you had enormous issues with people in this country and they had been played out in public and continue to be played out in public, even if you moved to Alpha Centauri, never mind Montecito, even if you died, they would still be writing about the other side of the story, still be portraying you according to their agenda, not your recollections, not your reality. You think if you moved house, suddenly you wouldn't care anymore or it wouldn't matter to you?
Well, it's my family at the end of the day as well. So it's a combination of whether his relationship with his family...
Exactly. So if you'd been appallingly treated in your own mind by your own family and the whole world was watching, you think that by moving house you'd somehow not care anymore?
But then do you think by voicing it in public...
Well, just tell me first, because we look it through the lens of our own experiences. If you've been appallingly treated by your own family and the whole world was reading their side of the story, you think that if you moved house and left the family business, you wouldn't be upset anymore. That's what you came on and said. I don't know whether you realise that. But
No. I know. I'm not saying that the upsetness is going to.
You wouldn't want your side of the story out there. The whole world is reading. The whole world is reading their side of the story.
But do you think that's going to change his being upset?
Yes, of course it is. Of course it is. He's written how that works. He's explained why it does help.
How does it help?
Well,
taking revenge on his family, or the truth is out there?
Well, obviously,
his truth.
Obviously,
his truth.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like the royal family can put forward their truth.
Well, yes, they can. Prince Charles did a book with Jonathan Dimbleby. Princess Diana did a book with Andrew Morton. They have press offices which are in daily contact with newspapers. Of course, that's the whole point, is that they have full access to the levers of media coverage, and he has chosen to cut out the middleman. I don't know what you're confused about, to be honest.
No, but can I ask, do you think that his book is fully the whole story? It's his opinion and his perspective. And
whose opinion do you expect him? Whose perspective do you expect him to write about?
No, but you're also saying that the whole of the media is also completely one-sided. And you're saying, there's going to be a middle ground. You're saying all of the media is one-sided. It's not all one-sided.
Well, the Guardian is pretty objective on this, but if you wanted to do it in terms of influence and readership, then, that's not an opinion, Hamer, that's just counting.
I agree. I'm not saying that the Daily Mail hasn't...
It's not just the Daily Mail, is it? It's the Sun, it's the Daily Express, even the Times, the Sunday Times, the Sunday Express. The Mirror is not sympathetic, I've got to be honest with you. You might think the Mirror, as an essentially left-leaning newspaper, might swim against the tide of the right-wing newspapers, but this transcends politics. This is about deference, and so the Mirror goes the same way. The Telegraph is possibly even more salacious than some of the cheaper print. So again, we're not going to get away from this central point, that because I've heard other people make this argument, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that you've just sort of inhaled it without thinking, but the idea that because he's moved to California and stepped back from formal royal duties, he should somehow not care about getting his side of the story out there, or not care about dealing with his trauma in the public space where he's lived his entire life, is, we both know deep down, ridiculous, right?
Do you think it's also fair that he's written about things that have happened in private with his relationship with his sibling and his father?
Yes, again, because things that have happened in private and have been leaked to the newspapers by quotes the other side.
Okay, so it's a tit for tat. So a personal conversation that he's had with his father is now full game for the whole population.
It's his property.
Okay, so then, effectively any private conversation that anyone has in their family can effectively be private property, public property.
Let me put it this way. Let me help you by putting it this way. Any conversation you have with anybody, you are free to talk about whenever you want, yes.
Okay, I think there's a certain element of privacy that should be afforded to your nearest and dearest.
So did he.
That's my personal
so did he, which is why when the newspapers were printing lies about him, he asked his family to intervene and help, and they refused.
Yeah, but the family won't. How do we know the family were actually leaking these conversations?
How do we know they weren't?
I know, but it's subjective, isn't it?
Whose perspective can Prince Harry provide?
But right now, we know objectively this is his words about private conversations. This is him actually divulging private conversations.
So now you understand why he had to do it, and when you came on, you didn't.
I still don't understand, but that's
really.
That's my
so you think a narrative involving him that is being printed on the front pages of every newspaper in the world is something he should just sit by and allow to unfold without actually trying to correct the record or put forward his own perspective? We both know that's not true. You don't believe that.
I don't think he should not put forward his own perspective, but he's also breaching the privacy that some of his family would have expected from him.
Well, he expected a lot from his family, and he didn't get it. Also, it's a bit. It's a bit. So, what is the line that you think is an appalling and egregious breach of someone else's privacy?
Well, I think stories about his father and his childhood, I think shouldn't have been. What stories?
Because you may have been following it more closely than I have.
But, stories about his father being bullied, I think that...
But his father's talked about that himself at Gordonstoun.
I know, but this is a personal conversation.
I'm going to push you ever so gently on this one. What is the stuff that you think he's revealed that is an appalling breach of somebody else's privacy?
I think the incident with his brother, I think that's private.
The one when his brother attacked him?
Well... allegedly attacked him.
Okay, so you don't think victims of assault should go public?
That's shoving someone, a brother, that he's admittedly has had physical tussles in the past.
Not as adults.
Isn't.
You don't think an adult victim of domestic assault should go public with the allegation?
No, of course I do think that.
Well, it's all falling apart, really, hey, but the more we talk about it. So
not in a book.
Oh, okay, not in a book, then.
No,
So he should have gone to the police station instead.
He should have gone to the police station.
There we go. So he shouldn't have written a book. He should have reported Prince William to the police.
I'll ask you a question.
We started off by talking about how he shouldn't have talked about any of this. Steve's in Wimbledon. Steve, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I didn't think he should be sacked. I didn't think he did anything wrong personally. I don't know. I didn't really look up on the vaccine stuff, so I'm not really that interested in that area.
Well, thanks for the call.
No, what I'm saying is I'm not sure. After you've just read what you've read, it sounds like he was sacked because of the vaccine conspiracy theory stuff as opposed to the
I don't think so.
Stuff.
I don't think so. I think that comparing it to the Holocaust is the offence.
That's what got him.
Yeah, I think it must be.
I don't understand.
Why?
I don't think that's an offence. The reason why is because he's made a comparison. So people make comparisons all the time, like with this Ukraine war, it's every minute it's the worst since the Second World War, it's this since the Second World War. Millions died in the Second World War. If a load of people said, oh, you can't compare it to that, it was much worse, then, everybody can take offence if you make a comparison.
Well, no, hang on. I mean, it is an offensive comparison. I think, are you suggesting it's so stupid that there's no need to take offence?
I don't think it's stupid. I think that
well, of course it's stupid. You can't compare vaccines to the mass...
You can.
Well, no, hang on. Before you do that, let me tell you why you can't. You can't compare... You can't compare vaccines to the mass murder of millions of people, Steve.
Well, you can.
Go on, then.
In your equation,
go on, then.
You think the vaccine is going to lead to the deaths of millions of people. That's my point. My point is...
But that makes you a blithering idiot.
Well, not really. I mean,
no, it really does.
I mean, look, there's a lot of people who have these views about the vaccine.
Yes, but there aren't millions of dead people, Steve. So that's why they're blithering idiots.
Not yet. Yeah, well, don't get me wrong. Potentially not yet. I'm not...
You're sounding very silly for someone who came on claiming not to know anything about vaccines.
What, the vaccine? I didn't take the vaccine, so I don't personally care. But what I'm saying is, he's making a comparison.
No, this is such a silly conversation.
No, it's not silly.
No, it really is. No, I am letting you finish. I'm just saying in advance for anyone who's not paying attention how silly it is.
Okay, well, let me tell you where I stand.
Okay.
I think he was making a comparison to the Holocaust.
Well, he was quoting someone else, actually, but you crack on.
Okay, to the Holocaust, in order to attenuate how serious he felt the vaccine was, the harm it was doing.
Yes, so you're absolutely right. That's why he's an idiot.
Yeah, he's gone to the extreme.
Yes.
But people do that all the time.
Well, they don't really. I don't think they do. Not members of Parliament. Can you think of another member of Parliament making an extreme example about the Holocaust?
I don't know.
But I think you need to know. You need to have one... Because you say people do it all the time.
Well, people make extreme comparisons.
Yes, go on, like what?
I can't think off the top of my head.
Well, do you want me to wait? Shall I wait?
Well, not really. Please don't wait.
I have to wait, because otherwise I have to ignore what you said.
Well, okay, well, you don't have to ignore what I said.
But if you've got no evidence for it.
Okay, let me give you one evidence.
Yeah, go on.
The Ukraine war.
Oh, boy, is it a full moon?
No, let me just say this.
Okay.
Yes.
The
Ukraine war is not as extreme as the Second World War,
right?
Is it?
No, but that's not a ludicrous comment.
No, but people make those comparisons.
But that's not like comparing vaccines to the Holocaust, mate.
It's the same sort of comparison.
It's nothing like the same sort. It couldn't be a more different comparison.
No, but you jumped off it when I've given you what you asked for. You said you'd wait. I gave you one.
No, you haven't given me an example of a ludicrous comparison.
Yes, the Second World War and Ukraine are not the same. Millions.
Yes, but that's not a ludicrous comparison, is it?
How many died in Ukraine? It is ludicrous.
Of course it's not ludicrous. It's measurable. You're counting. You're counting the number of...
War.
No, okay,
Steve. Are you
trying
to say the Second World War is the same as the Ukraine? What's happening now?
Steve, I don't think you're listening. Let me explain the difference between... Okay, so if you count the number of casualties in the Second World War...
Okay.
And then you count the number of casualties in the Ukraine war...
Okay.
And you say that there is a gulf of difference between the two things.
Okay.
That's what you just did, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's count the number of casualties in the Holocaust.
Okay.
And now let's count the number of casualties caused by the vaccines.
I don't know, but okay.
And now let's suggest, live on the radio, that the Gulf is about the same size as the one between the Ukraine war and the Second World War, because that's the point you just made, mate.
What
pause. No. You've got to pause now.
You've tried to highlight that, and I hear
you've got to pause. You've got to stop and think now about what you're doing and what you're saying.
Okay, no. Let's go with the numbers you've said.
These are your examples, not mine.
No, all right. So what I'm going to do is this. Let's put down the figures. Let's say that the Holocaust, 6 million people. That's the general figure everybody quotes.
Yeah.
And then let's pull up the figure for what he believes are people who's died.
No, because we're not doing what he believes, are we? We're doing what we all know.
People have died from the vaccine. How many then?
I have no idea, but it's certainly less than the Holocaust by an absolutely exponential figure.
Comparison. How many people died in the Second World War?
Oh, boy.
There were 25 million Russians alone. So how many people all in all died? And then how many people have died in the Ukraine war?
We've just done...
The comparison is roughly the same.
No, it couldn't be more different. We've just pointed that out. The example you've provided proves why Andrew Bridgen's comparison is so obnoxious. Mate, you're doing the opposite of counting.
No, it doesn't. You've asked me for a comparison, and then you've quoted the figures, but you've left it as variables. I'm trying to put figures into the variables. I don't know what these words even mean.
So, okay, let me try again. Okay, let me try again. Here's a really big thing.
Okay.
And here's a really little thing.
Okay.
It doesn't make much sense to compare them to each other.
It does if you're trying to make the really little thing seem really bigger.
Yeah, which means you're lying.
Well, which means you're trying to.
So we got there in the end, didn't we? Which is why he's been sacked.
At the beginning.
Which is why he's been sacked. Steve, mate, I don't know whether I get a medal for this.
It's not anti-Semitism.
You're the first person to use that phrase. You're the first person to use that phrase.
My point is this, just what you said, I agree with you.
I know you do. Why have I spent 5 minutes having to prove it to you?
That's my point. No, because that's my point. No, my point is this. Yes, it was a stupid extreme comparison, but my point is it wasn't anti-Semitic.
But we weren't. That's not. You're on the wrong phone in.
No, but I asked you before we started. I said, was he sacked because it was anti-Semitic?
You didn't use that phrase.
And you said
you didn't use that phrase.
I thought I did.
No, you didn't. We're talking about, was it because he mentioned the Holocaust? Was it because he mentioned the Holocaust?
Okay, so he's mentioned the Holocaust.
But mate, this is. I mean, you're up there, Steve. Thank you. Come back a minute. I'm just going to shake you by the hand and bid you farewell.
I'm confused.
Yeah, I know you are, Steve, but if you could perhaps have addressed that confusion before ringing me, delightful though this exchange has been, it may have been for the general good. Thank you, Steve. I think we should have done the conversation about Jesus being single and the Church of England using that as a reason why single people need to be treated with a little bit more love and respect. I don't know, phones have gone nuts now. You couldn't make it up, could you? Lawrence is in Chorley Wood. Lawrence, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Well, I've listened to what you've had to say, and I heard what you said about your father putting you through the private school system and being made redundant, etc. And in a way, I had a very similar experience. I failed my 11 plus, went to a secondary modern that very quickly became a comprehensive. My wife also went to the same school. We had 2 kids. I've always been a pretty entrepreneurial guy and sort of did quite well in life. But we decided to put our kids through private school. And at one time, my business collapsed. And I said to my wife then, and my son was probably 13 and my daughter was about 15. I said, well, the first thing we do, we take the kids out of school. And my wife said, no, the last thing we do is take the kids out of school.
Gosh.
And, you know, we soldiered on through.
My dad would have been the same as you.
Yeah, I got myself on my feet pretty quickly.
Sure.
And the point is that today my son is a partner in a top 40 accountancy firm. My daughter is a child psychologist. And that is all down to their education. And as for VAT on school fees, that is ridiculous because speaking from my own experience, I wasn't a burden on the state for education. I took my kids into the private system. and therefore...
Yeah, but that's it in a nutshell, Lawrence. Is speaking from your own experience, the suggestion that it should cost more is absurd. But what about the possibly millions of people in this country that would be accountants in top 40 firms if they'd had the education your son had? How can that possibly be fair?
It's not fair, but life isn't fair.
But the job of, you could argue, governments is to make it a bit fairer.
You could argue that, but the reality
I would argue that, actually. I think,
But the reality is that you're not being realistic, because, why did I succeed in my life? Because I'm entrepreneurial, because
except for the bit where you didn't.
Yeah, you're right. But then again, I jumped back on the horse and did something else. And
does that make you more valuable than a soldier or a nurse?
Makes me no more valuable than anyone else.
And then because you chose. Well, it is, because you're talking about the money that you made. You chose a path where wealth accumulation was prioritised over fairness or altruism or other things.
Actually, it wasn't. It wasn't. The only reason that I worked so bloody hard at the time...
But this is where you make me uncomfortable, because there's so many people listening to this programme who work, to use your phrase, bloody hard, and will never achieve the sort of earnings that private education can allow.
But they're not... they're not entrepreneurial, and by the same token...
they're altruistic or vocational.
But by the same token, I could have failed. I mean, I was lucky in that I didn't fail.
Yeah, so you're talking about advantage and luck being handed on to your children.
That's life. That's life, I'm afraid.
Of course it is. And the role of a Labour government is to bring in some checks and balances for the greater good, rather than the benefit of children like ours.
Well, if that's what you think, good luck to you.
What do you think the role of a Labour government is?
I think the role of a Labour government is to give handouts where they're not necessarily deserved. Have we got onto handouts? Okay, here's the thing. Because I am more successful than you, I can afford to pay the VAT, so your children can just go swing. I'm not saying that.
I am.
I'm not saying that.
I'm more successful than you. I can pay the VAT without... I can pay it easily. It's just tough luck on your children. It's because I work harder than you.
So what? You think...
No, I work harder than you. That's all. I work bloody hard, and I can afford the VAT easily, and if you can't, that's tough.
No, that's got nothing to do with it, James.
That's your
argument. No, it's not.
Life's not fair, Lawrence.
No, life isn't fair.
So your kids can't go there anymore, and mine can. That's just tough.
No, well, that's not the argument.
That is the argument. That's my argument. It's not my fault you muffed up your business.
Listen to what I've got to say.
I have.
No, you haven't.
I have.
The argument is that if I am putting my kids through private school, I am not a burden on the state.
No, the argument is it's going to cost you more.
Yeah, so the argument is...
If you can't afford it, that's just tough, hard cheddar.
Well, you're right there.
See, life's not fair.
No,
but on this occasion, it's your children that suffer, not mine.
That's fine.
Good. I'm glad we finally agreed. Debbie is in Bromley. Debbie, what made you pick up the phone?
Oh, hi, James. Thanks for having me, and apologies if this comes across as a bit of a gobbledygook. It's not meant to
be.
You're
in good company.
Firstly, I'm not a fan of this woman in any shape or form, and I don't have any arguments or disagree with what you've said. However, I do believe that people in authority are there to do a job. And the only analogy I can put it close to is bringing up my children. I was not their friend.
I'm sure you were.
I was not their friend. I was their parent.
No, but I'm sure you had fun together at times.
Of course we had fun together, but
and cuddles?
wasn't...
Cuddles?
Yes.
Lots of cuddles.
But that was parenting.
Yes.
My children are now in their 40s, and they're probably the best friends I've got. It's time for us to be friends now.
What's the crossover point? What's the age at which you're allowed to be friends with your children?
My opinion, early 20s.
What if you're a really early developer? What if you're very precocious?
I've got an 18-year-old that is probably more of a friend than my other two were when they were in their 20s.
So not early 20s then?
Well, it depends on each child, but the fact that I wasn't this new age parent of being a friend, I had a job to do, and the police have a job to do on duty. Whether it's dance,
but like being a parent, they can also have fun and be kind as well, while also being figures of authority. So I'm not quite sure what point you're making.
They're there to be respected, and they're a form of authority.
Yes.
Whether that be on a May Day pole dance issue or a Pride gig or whatever, they're there as a figure of authority. Now, if they want to support
they're not exclusively there as a figure of authority. They're also there as a figure of help. And you know,
Yes.
if a child is lost, they don't want to be frightened of police or see them as authority figures. They want to be able to go to the policeman and say that they've lost their mummy, and the policeman will help them find them. And I bet you danced with your children when they were young, didn't you?
Yes, but what I'm saying is they can support these groups. Why can't they, off duty, get together and do a so-called TikTok to support these groups?
Well, maybe they do.
Well, that's absolutely fine, but I truly believe
do a what? Do a what?
do a TikTok or something.
A TikTok, okay.
Get together. So
Right.
I'm not saying they shouldn't be supporting these groups at all.
But you're
in
just
any
saying
shape or
that they
form.
shouldn't be supporting them when they're actually with them. They should do it
No.
from a few miles away on TikTok.
No.
What
I'm
then?
saying when they are at they are at work, whether that be a May Day dance or
Yes.
a Pride, whatever it is,
Yes.
they are at work, they are on duty.
Yes, and the Chief Superintendent has explained that part of their job is building trust and confidence with the community. And if they can't be their true selves at work, how can we expect them to police our communities in the best possible way?
I understand that, but I don't think... You were talking about the boomers earlier on this morning.
I was.
And how they had it all different. And in the 50s, 60s, you saw a policeman on the street. He would come to your door. He would... if you got your car stolen or you were
probably
burgled, he would be
dance
there.
at the Coronation Street party. He'd have joined in with the conga, wouldn't he, at the royal wedding?
I slightly disagree. Disagree.
Okay.
But
So
anyway,
what would he have done? He'd have just stood there, sort of all stern, while everyone else was eating cake and having an ease up?
he probably would have smiled and had a chat, but he definitely would have been doing dancing and everything and joining in.
Okay.
I just think
I think he would.
I just think it's this day and age. Everybody's too friendly when it comes to those.
You can't be too friendly, Debbie.
No, you're taken out of context.
I've literally just repeated your own words back to you.
Yes, I know. But what I'm saying is, it's like teachers at school. They've lost all respect because they're trying to be the child friend all the time.
Lots of teachers haven't. Lots of teachers haven't. I mean, my school was very authoritarian, and it turned out most of them were paedophiles.
Okay, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this.
I want to be sure what we're disagreeing about. You don't want the police to be nice to people at some.
What I'm saying.
What then?
You can stand there at work. You can watch what's going on. You can smile. You can support them with a nod of the head. You don't have to get up there and start dancing, saying, "Hello, mate, I'm your friend. I'm on your side." Blah 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 blah. You are there. You are a policeman. That's why you joined the force.
Yes. Well, it's not though, is it? Because this guy was a chief superintendent for 40 years, and he's literally telling you why he joined the force.
Right. Okay, James.
Okay,
Thank you very much for your time.
You look after yourself. Hey, and stop being friendly to people, all right? Bromley's far too nice at the moment. There's far too many people being nice to each other. You got to stop being friends and be more authoritative. Ooh, Chris is thank you, Debbie. You look after yourself. David is in Hull, an 18-year-old dropping truth bombs all over the studio. David, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
Well, I'd like to hear a wee bit more positivity regarding the illegal immigration.
Go on, then. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't actually agree with her around the policy, but there is no alternative, James. I'm married to a lady from Asia. She paid to come here. She's nursing. I've no problem with migration. I think the clue is in the word illegal.
No, the clue is in the word asylum or safe route. So if they don't come by the boats, how do they come here?
No, James. No, a lot of those economic migrants come in by the boat.
But how do you find out whether they are bona fide asylum seekers or not?
Well, they have to go through, obviously, be looked at. I mean, at the end of the day...
And at the end of that process, of course, they cease to be either legal or illegal. They are either asylum...
At the end of the day, if it's illegal, it's illegal.
So what's the legal way?
The legal way is to get a visa.
No, if you're a refugee...
You can go to a British embassy.
If you're no, you can't.
Well, yes, you can.
No, I promise you can't. If you've come out of Afghanistan or Syria, or if you're fleeing from...
We have embassies in Italy. We have embassies in Holland.
You can't apply for asylum in... I mean, we can sit here all day, David.
Yes.
And remember, you're here to provide positivity. We can sit here all day and you can say that all of these people crossing the channel in boats could instead have gone to the embassy in Paris and applied for asylum. And it never becomes true, however many times you say it.
Well, we have to do something about it, James. And at the end of the day...
so you open up safe routes?
Yes. So safe routes, what, for illegal immigrants?
No, safe routes to establish whether an application is credible or not. Because when we do that, it turns out about 70 to 80% of the people apply are genuine asylum seekers.
What, from Bangladesh, Pakistan? They're not in any danger.
But how do you know? You can get killed in some countries for being gay.
You can be killed here.
Well,
we have terrible crime here.
Okay.
In fact, there was a lad that died here.
Yes, if it was against the law to be gay, hey, David, you're now talking about a lad that got stabbed, and you're here to provide positivity. So I'll give you another. I'll give you another chance. I'll give you another chance to provide some positivity that you wanted.
Well, at the end of the day, I don't see that this government has another alternative from the Rwanda policy. And I think earlier on you mentioned...
But it doesn't work.
It's got a different government now. How do you know it doesn't work?
Well, how many people have we sent to Rwanda?
We haven't sent any yet.
Well, that's how I know it doesn't work.
But if we get the policy through and we block set, at the end of the day, we have lawyers here.
Yes, and they've said it's illegal.
Who pays for these lawyers? The taxpayers. They're making good hay out.
The government has spent 300 million. The government has spent 300 million pounds of your money on lawyers.
It hasn't. Not yet. I believe it spent 140, and I believe there's another 100 million.
£3 million on lawyers fighting the law. And you know what happens when you fought the law, David?
No, the law bottom line is we need obviously amendments in law so it can deal with that situation. There's no problem with legal migration.
No, you keep coming back to that, and I'm still waiting for the positivity.
Well, the other thing is you're going about Brexit, and I feel quite offended.
No, we're not talking about Brexit today.
Vote.
Yes.
Yes, but that came about because the people of Britain wanted sovereignty. They wanted to choose.
No, it didn't. It came about because people of Britain wanted to take back control, and they wanted to reduce immigration, and they wanted to improve the cost of living. So how's that working out for you, David, in Hull?
Well,
let's go through it one by one. What's the current immigration figure?
The immigration figure this year is about 760,000.
And what was it before Brexit?
Oh, I'll guarantee it was lower than that. Yes,
correct. So that didn't work. How's the cost of living working out for you?
You can't tie that to Brexit.
Of course you can. That's what you voted for. No. And now you're offended that people think you're stupid.
No.
So what's the biggest benefit you got?
Pakistan is a country who's in... I mean, I think it's going for its 23rd bailout, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, what's you talking about now? Pakistan?
That's correct. We have illegal migrants coming from Pakistan.
But how you wanted to talk about Brexit?
No. Brexit
yes.
No, it was mentioned by your other callers.
Yes, it was mentioned by you a minute ago. You said you keep going on about Brexit, and you were going to say something interesting. What was it?
The interesting thing about Brexit was that was a democratic vote.
Yes, for?
We really wanted... Well, there was a lot of Labour voters.
So what's the biggest... What's the biggest win for you? What's been the biggest improvement to your life since you voted for Brexit? As a consequence of Brexit?
I didn't vote for Brexit.
Rubbish.
Sorry?
Rubbish.
James,
David.
You shouldn't... No, James, listen.
I am listening, David.
Brexit.
Well, I think you did.
I didn't vote. You
didn't vote at all?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
It's a long story, James, which I couldn't really explain. I had to leave. Me and my family had to leave Scotland. We were witnessing an HMRC case. We came down to Hull here. We've gone through the system. It's been an absolute nightmare.
What's the worst policy of your life that a government has introduced?
The worst policy of my life that the government introduced? I think there's been many. I haven't seen many positive. To be perfectly honest,
you were supposed to be providing positivity.
I wrote to Gordon Brown in 2008. I mentioned to him we needed a national house building programme.
Okay. Listen, I don't want to sound... You've put me in a very uncomfortable position, David. It's 10:47. I've got to go to a break. What? Can you remember why you rang in?
Yes, because I was offended by I was offended by your broadcast, and you seem to be very
But what were you offended by?
Well, you seem to go on about the migration. There's a legal migration.
We're talking about Rwanda failing, and so what did you ring in to say? The question is, what's the worst policy that you've witnessed in your life, or how did Rishi Sunak get into such a mess over this particular policy?
I'm not a supporter of Sunak.
No, but what did you ring in for?
I rang him because I was offended, basically. I'm listening to this all the time. There's no positivity.
No, but you were going to provide some positivity.
Exactly. Where would you send these migrants, the illegal migrants that shouldn't be here? Where would you send them?
Well, I don't know that they shouldn't be here until their asylum process has been, application has been processed.
Let's say the process.
Well, then you can send them back to their country of origin. And we could do that under the Dublin Convention.
We can't.
Well, we can.
There have been,
we can.
There's many have been refused visas. They're still here illegally.
Yes, but we are legally entitled to remove these people.
No,
yes, David.
Illegal.
Why are we having a phone-in from 1974?
James,
David.
When did you ever hear of anyone doing anything illegal and then that becoming legal?
Well, Rishi Sunak did it yesterday. Rishi Sunak did it yesterday.
How?
It was illegal to send people to Rwanda, and then he was going to pass a law in the House of Commons to make it legal.
How is it legal?
Because it's not a safe country. Our Supreme Court has decided.
No, you said earlier it's a different government. It's a different country now.
No, but David, I can't do this anymore. I'm really sorry you're offended, but I think it might be a you problem rather than a me problem. James is in Hersham. James, what would you like to say?
I don't think Bradman should apologise for what she said. I don't think the words swarm and invasion have got anything to do with the respectful lady who had to lead the Holocaust, because the Jews were indigenous to Germany, so they never swarmed or invade.
Yeah, go on.
So that's what I'm saying. I don't think Bradman should apologise for what she said.
Okay.
I think she's right.
Because the Jews were indigenous to Germany?
Well, the Jews were indigenous to Germany, so they didn't swarm or invade. So I don't know why...
You know, they rounded up Jews in Poland and France, and she wasn't even from Germany, I don't think, this woman. She was from Belgium.
Okay.
So what? The whole notion of the whole notion of the master race eschews completely the notion that the Jews are indigenous to any European countries. You don't need me to tell you that. So why mention that at the outset?
Could you say that again? Sorry.
Why mention indigenous German Jews at the outset when we're talking about a Holocaust?
I didn't know she was from Belgium. I mean, she was indigenous to Belgium, so...
It's quite an odd position to arrive at without having all the facts in front of you, James.
Well, there's the facts. She was from Belgium. She didn't swarm or invade anywhere.
Right.
So for her to be upset...
So why did the Nazis use that language, then?
They didn't, did they?
Well, I mean, this is silly now.
Well, there's no evidence of that, is there?
There's no evidence of the Nazis using language like vermin or invasion or swarm to describe Jews.
We're not talking about vermin, we're talking about the two words swarm and invade.
Well, I'm adding vermin to the list now as well, if you're unaware of how the Nazis...
No, you can't be... I mean, if you're just going to keep adding words, then we could be here all day talking about words.
Yes, you're right, we are here all day talking about words.
No, but we're just talking about two specific words, what Braverman said.
Yes.
And I don't think she was wrong in using them words. But
you don't think the Nazis used them either, James, so your position is already a bit ridiculous, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Not really, no. I mean, for the people to clapping or applauding, that's... I mean, they obviously agree with what Bradman was saying.
Well, you would be as well, wouldn't you?
I would be, yeah.
So if Joan Salter was here now and she is telling you that this language reminds her of how the Nazis spoke about people like her, the ones that got away and of course the ones that were murdered in the camps, what would you say to her?
I wouldn't say that you swarmed or invade anywhere.
No, but she's saying this language reminds me of how they spoke about us.
How does them two words remind her?
Well, she's told you. I'll tell you again if you want.
Well, no,
I feel very strongly that the Holocaust ended in the death camps, but it started with words, with othering the Jewish people. This isn't too many words for you, is it, James?
No, it's not even
okay. With othering the Jewish people, blaming them for all the problems in Germany, and I'm afraid that the actions and words of our Home Secretary is very similar. She needs to look into her humanity rather than dehumanising a group of people, many of whom are absolutely desperate. So how would you set her straight?
I'd say to her that she didn't swarm or invade anywhere. She was from Belgium. She was made to leave.
And if she said to you, I have no idea what you're talking about, how would you clarify?
She wouldn't say that, would she? How do you know what she'd say?
Well, that's why I used the word if.
Well, I don't think she would say that. I mean, I don't think she did swarm or invade anywhere. She was indigenous to Belgium as a Jew.
Okay.
She had to leave Belgium because the Nazis made her leave. And I think Bradman's right. We are being swarmed and invaded.
There we go. That's fine then. So you use the same language that they use?
Yeah, I'm using them two words, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And so did the Nazis.
Not vermin or any other words you want to add in. Just swarm and invade.
Yeah. So you're on the radio defending Nazi language and saying that you'd use it too?
No, I ain't a Nazi. I'm Irish. So I'm an Irish Catholic.
So was William Joyce, actually, mate.
I wouldn't be defending like the Nazis.
But just their language, just the way they talked about.
Well, no, I don't
Jews.
think. But you're calling Braverman a Nazi?
No. Joan Salter is accusing her of using the same language that the Nazis used to talk about Jews.
To me, I'm happy using that Nazi language.
Yes, that's not calling you a Nazi, is it?
Well, it is in a way, isn't it?
No.
Well, I'm not using Nazi language.
You just said you would. You just said it is a swarm and it is an invasion.
It is, yeah.
That's what the Nazis would say about the Jews.
No, they haven't.
Well, this is the point where the conversation sort of began and ended, because they just did, mate. Read a book.
Where did the Nazis ever say they were being swarmed and invaded?
I'll tell you what, just go and Google it. And then when you've Googled it, ask yourself why you didn't do that before you rang in.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
On you go. Sheila's in Stratford. Sheila, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
First-time caller.
Welcome.
I'm Asian and extremely proud that Rishi got in. Might not believe in everything he does or says, but... my question to you, sir, is Sakir now placing these adverts that are racially aggravating because Rishi is Asian? Does he think that... does Labour believe... Well, I don't think they'll win because I'm definitely not supporting them,
right.
And nor are quite a few of my friends.
Yes.
Does he believe that by attacking... I mean, you know, he was part of the justice system. Does he believe that by plastering his brown face against adverts that how should we call it, the indigenous population will think that,
I don't generally use that word on this programme because I think it's meaningless. But I don't know, are you asking me or are you asking him? Because
I'm just thinking...
But what face should he use? I mean, Rishi Sunak, it is Rishi Sunak's face, and it is a criticism of... Go on.
So if that's the case, sir, if that is the case...
You don't have to call me sir, Sheila. You can call me James. What is the question that you're asking? Is there a racial subtext to a criticism of his wife's taxes?
Yes, absolutely.
No.
Because
how can there be?
The kid didn't do this with Boris. He didn't do it to Boris, and Boris did lots of awful things. Well, he didn't do it to Liz Truss, who did...
Well, because he's not going to be fighting them in a general election in 18 months' time. This is part of the election cycle.
It is, but isn't it, just as Michelle Obama has said, it's just too low?
Well, she hasn't said that about this. How
Hillary Clinton?
How can you put a picture of Rishi Sunak in the newspaper without him having a brown face?
You can't do that, obviously.
So what brings the racial subtext into it then?
The racial subtext is the brown skin. The brown skin.
But that's the only skin he's got, Sheila.
It is the only skin he's got, but they've never done this before. Why are they doing this now?
I've just answered that question. Let's not go around in circles. This is the election cycle. They are now on a war footing for the general election, and therefore their advertising campaign features the Prime Minister that they will be fighting to depose at the next general election. I don't know who else you think could appear in these posters.
No, I hear you, yes. Rishi Sunak is brown. I get you. I totally understand.
Do you?
But the slogans Yes, I do.
Right.
But the slogans that they are putting against him, which you have also said, which some are true, some are not, they're half-truths,
Yeah.
they're inaccurate. Why are they placing these inaccuracies against his name and his photo?
Because he's the Prime Minister.
But then, like you said, it's the judges that put these guys to prison.
Yes, but this is a political attack ad. I mean, Tony Blair doesn't really have red satanic eyes, but the Conservative adverts in 1997 portrayed him as having them.
True. It's just, I don't know, just like yourself, it's a seesaw at this moment in time of
Well, it
emotion.
didn't sound like a seesaw. You were adamant that you're never going to vote for him and that he has been racist. So I'm just looking for a tiny scintilla of evidence. No, that's fine. I understand that. But what is it about these two adverts that makes you think his ethnicity is relevant?
Like you said,
well, don't say like I said, because I don't think that the adverts do bring his ethnicity into it in any way, shape or form. I mentioned that Diane Abbott did, but if you're a sworn anti-Labour person, I doubt Diane Abbott is someone who's...
I voted Labour, apart from when Jeremy Corbyn got in. I did vote Labour.
Right.
My family have always voted Labour.
So what is it about these adverts that makes you think his ethnicity is pertinent, then?
How can I put this without being...
Well, just speak.
I don't think you'll ever understand because you're not brown.
Right.
And, you know...
Well, I can. I mean, just use words to explain. Why? I mean, because all you've mentioned to me is his face is brown, and I don't know what the alternative would be. They could hardly, Photoshop him to make him not brown, could they? So what face are they supposed... when they're launching an attack upon the sitting Prime Minister, whose picture should they use?
Oh, no, I hear you loud and clear.
Well, you keep saying that, and then you keep returning to these slightly half-chewed morsels.
Let me reiterate, then.
Don't reiterate, because you haven't iterated anything yet. Why is it racist? You haven't. You've just said it's racist because he's got a brown face.
No. You're twisting my words, sir.
I'm really not.
Absolutely
Don't
not.
call me sir. It sounds silly. Go on, then.
James, I haven't said that at all. What I'm saying is that these slogans or these campaign sentences that they have put against his name... Do you think...
Let me read one, just so that everyone knows what you're talking about. Do you think it's right to raise taxes for working people when your family benefited from a tax loophole?
Not.
Rishi Sunak does?
No.
What no?
I disagree with him. I mean, I agree with Keir Starmer there, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. You know, the Russian loophole, yes, that's disgusting.
So where does ethnicity come into it?
I believe in. But the rest of them, I don't believe in them.
No, but that's fine, but that's not what I'm asking. Where does the ethnicity come into it?
The ethnicity comes into it because these slogans that have gone on individual posters...
But there aren't any slogans.
They're not untrue. The context of the advert, the context of the
that's a political advert playing fast and loose with the truth. That's as old as politics itself. I just need one line, a single sentence.
Something should do that.
Yes, but what does the brownness of his face have to do with any of this, Sheila? Because you were pretty adamant when you came on.
And I still am.
Right.
There'll be people out there that will associate his skin colour, his hair colour with the slogan and think...
Okay.
This is let's vote Labour, and that's the key. It's true.
And when Suella Braverman attacked,
she's awful. She is awful.
But you're going to vote for her.
I won't. The thing is,
I don't know that we can continue this conversation. I'm very confused, Sheila. Who do you like?
Well, I don't like any of them.
Okay.
To be perfect.
Oh, that's
there is no one out there.
That's fine. Well, I'm still struggling. It could be, as you say, a part of my whiteness, my white privilege, indeed, that I can't see what the ethnic subtext would be to these adverts, except the point Diane Abbott made, which was essentially saying what Keir Starmer is doing is a watered-down version of what Suella Braverman did, which leaves it pretty much impossible to attack the Labour Party without also going after the Tory party much harder. Thank you, though. Rafiq's in Bolton. Rafiq, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good morning. This is the first ever time I'm just calling LBC. Also, I'm a regular listener. I would like to, go back to the question, you asked. I would like to start from the from the United Nations when Imran Khan represented, the OIC, where he stated that their religion means Quran, our prophet, mocking. It's extremely, painful. And my religion, my prophet, they have they're so dear to me more than my parents.
Yes.
And it's always about your sentiments. Remember that. In Holocaust, in some countries, if you talk about Holocaust with due respect, then you will be questioned, or probably there may be implications.
Yes, if you deny the fact that 6 million people died, then you will in some countries be prosecuted. But I understand the depth of your feeling, but you're comparing apples with oranges. There's no intellectual comparison between Holocaust denial and setting fire to a religious text which is based entirely upon belief, not historical fact.
I mean, you completely cut me because I was coming to the point that it's not from the Islamic point or Muslims' point of view. My concern is, mocking any religion, either it's Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, any religion or Judaism, then it should be prohibited.
No.
Because it depends that, as I said, it is really so dear to me. If someone mocks...
No, I understand that, and I'm not going to bully you or insult you, but I could not disagree with you more strongly. It's absolutely crucial to a free society that I can mock your religion and you can mock mine if I have one. Absolutely crucial, because otherwise you're imbuing beliefs with protected status. And why should your belief have more protection than someone else's belief that the Earth is flat?
I agree.
No, you don't. You don't agree. You don't agree.
No, I agree that
you don't think it should be illegal to tell somebody that the Earth is round and that they're an idiot for thinking that it's flat.
I think I just put my point across, but I think just twisting around.
No, I'm not. You think it should be illegal for people to take the mickey out of your religious beliefs. So why should it not be illegal for people to take the mickey out of someone else's belief that the Earth is flat?
It should be illegal, across the board for any religion, mocking any religion.
No, it's not. Stop saying religion and just say belief.
Okay.
So you think that any belief should be protected by law? Even if I believe, for example, I've already said that the Earth is flat. What about if I believe that everybody should give me...
your belief anyway?
Well, I can mock any belief I want.
What would you achieve out of this?
Well, I don't need to achieve anything. I might make my friends laugh.
I think the people go to that extreme. They may
it's not
have
an extreme.
Issues.
Listen to how calm I sound. Listen to how calm I sound and how excited you sound.
No. It's about how respectful you to other people's religion.
Absolutely, and people should be respectful, but they shouldn't have to be.
And freedom of speech doesn't mean that hurting somebody. There's always a limit to everything.
Yes, I know. And a limit would not be breached by burning an inanimate object like a book, however passionately you felt about it. Otherwise, you'd have to extend that protection to lots of other books. I really like Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, but the idea of you having to go to jail if you set fire to it...
This is your opinion, James, and I've got a right to have my opinion.
I know you have, but your opinion is wrong. Yeah. And I'm explaining why. I am explaining why.
No, this is your interpretation, but I'm not taking
It's not an interpretation. You believe that setting fire to a book should be illegal. Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Well, then, unfortunately, yes, that extends to that. No, not religious. It doesn't, because religious is just an opinion.
It's not same as Bible
and
Quran.
Yes, it is.
And no,
it is to a non-believer. But to a non-believer, they're identical. To a non-believer, they're identical.
You fail to accept that to us is more important than Quran.
Which is why and that's why you would never set fire to it. But to a non-believer,
it means that in this country, equalities of law, respecting everybody's religion, regardless, what they believe or the religion is protected. It's a protected characteristic.
Yes, you can believe whatever you want. It's a protected characteristic, but you can't stop me from using whatever I want in my house to start a fire.
I think you completely ignore my first I
completely dismantled. I completely dismantled your first point with ease.
No. What the first point was that if someone mocked your and my parents, you keep cutting me. If your and my parents, then I wouldn't really spare it. I'll probably smack them on their face.
Yes, and then you'd be arrested.
Who's got the right? Who's got the right to mock my parents and demean my parents? When I said that,
everybody
my
does.
Prophet, my religion is more important to anyone else.
So you know all those American comedians who do the line, they say, your mama's so fat that when she walks into the garden that she blocks out the sun. Do you think they should be arrested?
Yeah. Well, I think I've pretty much said that, I mean, this the freedom of speech is probably is taking too far. I believe my freedom of speech finishes right from the start.
You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever. You can even say your freedom of speech extends to saying that I think people should be arrested if they burn a book. But my freedom of speech extends to saying, don't be silly. Otherwise, you'd have to extend that to every book. Just because you happen to believe X, Y, and Z, and therefore this book here is special, means that somebody else who believes A, B, and C can say, well, that book there is special, and you'd never be able to set fire to anything ever again. What if somebody, Rafiq, final question, what if somebody believes that logs are sacred?
What you mean? Say it again?
What if somebody believes that logs are sacred? Holy logs. You can't set fire to wood. God made wood. You're not allowed to set fire to it.
Yeah, then it should be forbidden.
OK, I think we've proved our point. Raymond is in Uxbridge. Raymond, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say that Labour are to blame for all the troubles of HS2.
Oh.
It was baked in the planning from the beginning.
Yes.
In 2009, they decided that the best way to get to Birmingham would be to tunnel under West London, build the biggest viaduct in Western Europe across the lakes at Harefield and Denham, and then tunnel under the Chilterns. I defy you to find a more expensive route.
How would you have done it?
Gone up. The Romans knew the way.
What? The Romans? The Romans didn't build railways.
Yeah. No, they didn't build, but they knew the best route. The canal builders knew the best way to Birmingham.
They couldn't tunnel, could they? I mean, we've got... You're familiar with the London Underground. I know it's overground at Uxbridge, but the technology improved immeasurably with the Victorians, and tunnelling was much more efficient.
And they didn't need to tunnel.
Right.
They went up past Mill Hill.
Who, the Romans?
Through that gap. In Watling Street.
OK. I mean, this is a novel. No, I like it. So they should never mind tunnelling. We should forget about tunnelling. We should have done what the Romans would have done.
Yeah, well, we should have followed the route because it is the logical route.
Here's the thing.
Way that
go on.
The M1 went that way to Birmingham.
I know. What about the Egyptians? What would the Egyptians have done? What would the Egyptians have done?
Never mind about the Egyptians. Just think about what I'm
hang on a minute. Why are you bringing the Romans into it?
To tunnel under West London.
But what about the London Underground?
Yes, but this is the cost you've got to concentrate on.
I'm just the precedent of tunnelling under West London had already been established.
On this leg,
what happened?
Finish the rest of it.
What happened in December 2010?
So the Tories got in, and I agree with you.
They got in May. They got in May 2010. So in January 2009, Labour set up HS2 Limited. In December 2010, it was the Tory Lib Dem coalition that announced what was going to happen. They reviewed the plans and announced the Y-shaped route to Birmingham, Manchester and Leeds would be put out for consultation. So that would be David Cameron and Nick Clegg. In January 2012, the Conservative Transport Secretary Justine Greening gave the green light. So just run us through how it was all Labour's fault again.
Well, because they planned the original unsustainable.
No, they didn't even put a single shovel in the ground. The plans were reviewed in December 2010 by the coalition, and the green light was issued by the Tory Transport Secretary Justine Greening in January 2012. So just explain how that was Labour's fault.
So Labour and Conservatives...
no, you said it was all Labour's fault. And then you talked about the Romans, and now I'm steering you back to the people who actually made the decisions and issued the green lights.
The natural route from London to Birmingham.
Yes, which they should have done it like Watling Street.
West London and building the most...
but why are you blaming Labour for that, though? Why are you blaming Labour for that when they were...
That was in their original plans.
Well, there was nothing to stop them changing the plans in December 2010 and then issuing the green light in January 2012.
quite true.
Well, there we go. We got there in the end, Raymond. But up the Romans.
Well, I did have a word with Boris. I don't know if you know, I live in Uxbridge.
I did mention that.
About 3 years ago.
Oh, yes.
And I said to him, why don't you use the old Central Railway route? Loads of the infrastructure still there. You'll save 60% of your costs. Yeah. And he said, the technicians tell me that's too difficult. Because I said to him, you could take that money you save and build a route from Liverpool to Leeds and cement us in the north. But they didn't listen to me, so...
Well, more fool him. And I'll tell you what, and look what happened to him, Raymond. There's a lesson there for all of us.
There is indeed.
Mind how you go. We're staying in Uxbridge. Sarah's there. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
Thanks
Sarah.
for taking my call.
You're very welcome. What have the Romans ever done for you?
Well, the only thing that Raymond was right about there was that it is in the wrong place, the route.
Right.
It is curving up the Colne Valley, which is a really important water production area with our...
But that's all. That's over and done with now. That's
It isn't. If you go and look at it today,
yes,
you'll see.
No, but no one's suggesting that they don't do that.
Been built.
Yes.
There's nowhere where it's ready for the track at all. You know,
no one is suggesting that we don't pull the. No one's suggesting that we pull the plug on that bit.
I'm suggesting that. I think that's the only sensible thing to do.
Right.
Scrap the whole thing because the moment
spent £71 billion.
£36 million every week.
Yes.
They're spending today £136 million every week. It is a rip-off.
Okay.
It is a con.
What?
It's almost like a shell company, HS2. They've got these main contractors that are...
it's not, no, careful. Don't do any libels. Don't do any libels. I thought we were going to be safe this hour. All right, okay. But so that's two people in Uxbridge who don't like it. Everyone in the north is quite keen. That's a balance. Thank you, Sarah. Graham's in Borehamwood. Graham, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. I think the one word that seems to be missing from all of these conversations about the terrible situation there is the word surrender. The needless killing of people can simply stop today if Hamas simply surrendered. And there's precedent for that because the PLO were fighting in Jordan and realised they were against insurmountable odds. They surrendered and left the country, and then peace was restored.
With respect, Graham, the conversation we're having today is about the scenario absent surrender. It's about what Netanyahu means when he says nothing will stop us, and the question of why there is this reluctance, although to their credit many of my contributors today are shrugging off that reluctance, a reluctance to admit that Israel is perfectly prepared to kill every civilian in Gaza.
I think, James, I think that Netanyahu's political future is very limited. He's not going to last long after this.
Well, that'll be little comfort to anybody burying their child next week.
Well, yes, but the point is they don't have to bury their child if Hamas put the white flag up. Simple as that.
Yes, but as I've just reminded you respectfully, the conversation we're having today is about what Netanyahu is doing, not what Hamas should be doing. And what Netanyahu is doing is clearly, to my mind, embarking upon a policy built upon the belief that every single human being in Gaza deserves to die.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but the point of the message...
Challenge it.
The point should be that as soon as Hamas...
But you can't have a conversation about what Netanyahu is doing by telling me what you think Hamas should be doing.
Well,
it's not a conversation. Here's the question. What is Netanyahu... Graham, the question is, what is Netanyahu doing? Your answer can't be, let me tell you what Hamas should be doing. Do you see that?
No, I don't.
Okay, let me say it again. Let me say it again. Let me say it again.
By surrendering.
Let me say it again.
They have power.
Let me say it again.
If they surrender, the Israelis will chuck him out. Simple as that.
Let me say it again. The question, what is Netanyahu doing, does not admit the answer, let me tell you what Hamas should be doing. You must see that.
I don't.
Well, would you mind trying a bit harder?
I see that the cause of the problem...
Would you mind trying a tiny bit harder? Would you mind trying a tiny bit harder?
I'm trying as hard as I can.
Okay, then I'll say it once more. The question is, what is Benjamin Netanyahu doing, a man who has talked in the past of having a chance to get all the Arabs out? What is he doing in the next war?
if we do it right, we'll have a chance to get all the Arabs out. So again, respectfully, that rather removes the precedent of previous negotiations or surrenders from the table, because he's already talking in his own mind about the next war. We get all the Arabs out. The question of what is his end game, what is his purpose, you cannot answer that question by telling me, here's a complete counterfactual about what I think Hamas should be doing. And what I think...
The end game for Netanyahu is probably a prison cell if he gets convicted for corruption.
Yeah, that's another helpful distraction, but I mean, a rather transparent one.
Well, that's your view, not mine.
No, it's not. No, talking about Netanyahu being in a prison cell is a distraction from the question of what his current military policy is. That's not a view. That's not a view. That's a statement of fact. It's not a view.
Well, his position will become irrelevant the moment Hamas surrender.
So what is his position? What is the position? What is the position that would become irrelevant?
He will no longer have power if Hamas surrenders.
No, you said his position would become irrelevant. What is his position?
Yeah. His position now, it doesn't matter.
But what is it, though?
As soon as they surrender,
what is it?
Then the war stops and the Israeli people will throw him out of power.
What is the position?
I've no idea what his position is. I can't know what's in his mind.
So you don't know what the words "nothing will stop us" mean?
Well, words that were said 20, 30 years
No, this was yesterday.
Probably were... I'm sure he is not interested in genocide. The Israeli
what does "nothing will stop us"
genocide.
mean, then? What does it mean? What is his position? He said to the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, in Jerusalem yesterday, not 20 years ago. And also, again, respectfully, if you thought that saying he said that 20 years ago somehow diffused the words, then you must be acknowledging the power of the words when you suddenly discover that they were actually said yesterday. So what do you think they mean?
I don't know what they mean.
Yes, you do.
I don't know what... I don't.
You do, Graham.
I don't agree.
Of course you do.
But
well, let's go through them. Let's go through them one by one. Let's go through them one by one. What does the word "nothing"? What does the word "nothing" mean?
It's irrelevant once the fighting stops.
What does the word "nothing" mean?
He'll no longer have any power. He'll be a footnote in history.
That's all very interesting, but what does the word "nothing" mean?
I'm sorry, I don't see where you're going with that.
Well, it's a fairly straightforward attempt to help you understand what the words "nothing will stop us" mean, because you just said you didn't.
Well, he wants to see Hamas eradicated.
Talking about the word, what does the word "nothing"
mean? I don't think, from a military point of view, you'll ever eradicate Hamas.
What does the word "nothing" mean?
Not the point. The point is...
I'm afraid it is the point. It's what he said yesterday, and it's his policy that you phoned in to discuss.
People are needlessly being slaughtered.
Well, I agree with that. So what does the phrase "nothing will stop us" mean? It means there is no level of...
to stop it is for Hamas to surrender.
Okay, so we're back...
argument.
But no, it's not the end of...
The government changes, and they all can get together, and Gaza can be rebuilt.
Graham, you can talk all day, and I'm going to keep you on the line until you tell me what you think "nothing will stop us" means.
I don't know what you...
Yes, you do.
I can't say what...
Of course you can.
...is in his mind.
So you can conjure up a confident prediction of what would happen in Israel in the event of Hamas surrendering.
Hamas.
Graham, you're letting yourself down. What does "nothing will stop us" mean?
He means he wants to eradicate Hamas.
No, he doesn't.
Well,
what does "nothing will stop us" mean?
It means he'll do what it takes to eradicate Hamas.
So what would stop him from continuing that course? How many deaths?
The surrender of Hamas would stop him.
No, nothing will stop us.
The surrender of Hamas would stop him.
Graham, you know what these words mean, Graham? It means
surrender of Hamas will stop
it means he's prepared to kill 2 million civilians.
No, it doesn't. Don't be stupid.
Oh, so you know what it doesn't. You know what it doesn't mean,
James. You're being absolutely ridiculous.
So what does it mean then?
It means he wants to eradicate Hamas.
No, what does "nothing will stop us" mean? Because you know what it doesn't mean.
He will use all the military power he has to eradicate Hamas.
Yes, and the civilians who are caught up in the crossfire?
If they're being used by Hamas as human shields, they are a terrible consequence of war, which Hamas will stop by surrendering.
So there we are, all 2 million of them.
No.
So how many?
You're being just fantastic.
Well, thank you, but how many?
How
many, Graham? How many, Graham? How many?
There is no point playing numbers games.
But you just rejected 2 million.
No, I'm not rejecting. I'm not putting any numbers on it. It's a military situation.
How many is too many?
To be stopped by Hamas surrendering. Why won't you agree that if Hamas surrender, the war stops?
Because I'm not psychic. And I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu's current policy, which is nothing will stop us. And you can't even say what those 4 words mean because
I'm sorry,
because the words would turn the words would a hypothetical situation, Graham. You're here to talk about.
You're not that clever.
Oh, I am. You're here to talk about Hamas surrendering, and you're criticising me for discussing a hypothetical situation.
Well, it's not a hypothetical situation for Hamas to surrender.
Okay,
give you an example. Arafat surrendered in Jordan, and they all went out of Jordan, and there was peace.
And Netanyahu said, in the next war, if we do it right, we'll have a chance to get all the Arabs out. So it was just an exercise in mowing the lawn, I think, is the phrase that's often used.
Well,
just before you go, and I'll ask you this again respectfully, why do you find it so hard to answer that question, nothing will stop us? Is it because you do know the answer and you don't want to say it out loud?
I don't agree. I don't know the answer, and you don't know the answer as well. You're just throwing these words up in the air, and frankly, they're an incitement.
Well, I'm asking you what they mean, that's all.
No, I've told you what they mean. They mean the eradication of Hamas.
And what does nothing mean?
I've told you. I mean, I'm like talking to the wall.
Well, I know how you feel. But nothing will stop us means there is absolutely no limit upon how much civilian death we will accommodate in pursuit of what you describe as the eradication of Hamas. Why do you find that so hard to admit?
Because I don't agree with you. I don't think it means that at all.
So what does it mean then?
Eradication of Hamas.
So what does
Hamas can stop it tonight.
Okay, Graham. I mean, down with hypotheticals and numbers games. Nothing will stop us. There are 2 million people in Gaza, and there are 20, 30,000 Hamas terrorists, say 50,000 if you prefer. How many of the 2 million must die in pursuit of the eradication of the 50,000? So the reason I read out those grim texts earlier is because I don't want to accuse Graham of lacking courage, because I think he's a better person in some ways than Marcus, who writes about the easiest way is just to wipe Gaza off the map. They have nothing to offer the world anyway. Because Graham's moral compass prevents him from going there in public, out loud. I think even in private he can't conceive of Gaza being wiped off the map, and in Marcus's words, they have nothing to offer the world anyway. But unless you are prepared to say that out loud, then you end up having to pretend that you don't know what the words nothing will stop us mean. Or that an answer to the question of what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing could somehow entail a hypothetical about what Hamas should do instead. It's a bit like saying, what time is it? To which Graham would respond by saying, well, quite chilly actually, and you should probably pack an umbrella.
Stuart's in Harrow. Stuart, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say that I'm very happy that there's at least been some pushback from climate alarmism. I think the good thing also is that the BBC will be forced to treat the issue fairly, and I think the anti-vaxxers are actually the climate alarmists. And it's ironic that the people, do you know how much net zero is projected to cost by the Office for OSBC?
No idea, no, Stuart.
Well, you should.
Why?
You're a radio presenter. Because it's 1.4 billion pounds.
So what's that in the context of, what did we spend on PPE, was it, and on track and trace? Is that 33?
Sorry, 1.4 trillion pounds.
Well, that sounds like quite a lot. And what do we get in return?
Absolutely, not very much. Actually, what do you think
we get a safer planet and we live for longer? Why do you think Ford are opposed to it?
As one person from Ford, first of all, he's not banning. He's stopping the ban. He's stopping the ban on petrol cars.
No, why do you think Ford are opposed to it?
I have no idea if one person's opposed to it.
It's not one person. It's Ford Motor Company. It's an official statement. It's an official statement. Stuart, stop it! You can't say it's one spokesperson. He is the spokesperson for the Ford Motor Company.
They've invested a lot of money. The mistake.
So why are they opposed to it? Why are they spooked by it?
Boris Johnson made a mistake. He shortened it from 2035 to 2030. Other European countries are doing 2030.
So what is the benefit of alienating a company that have invested £430 million in the company?
That's money's gone. It's not realistic. Obviously, the ban.
What is the benefit of doing it?
I'm talking about net zero. I'm not talking about petrol consumption in general.
No, well, I am. Because what made me think this topic is really interesting and this decision is clearly crackers is the fact that he's alienated both people who are concerned about the environment, unlike you, and people who make cars,
unlike you. But you know better than both of them.
I think it shows someone's insincere person.
Well, I completely agree that it shows insincerity, but you're in favour of it.
If you obsess about climate change, right, as you think it's an incredible emergency, and you think we should spend £1.4 trillion not fixing it, right, not making any difference to the problem, even if it is...
No, you can't say that it will cost £1.4 trillion to do it, and then say that it won't work.
Well, it won't work. Do you think it will change the weather?
No, of course it won't change the weather. It will change the amount of fossil fuel gases, greenhouse gases, that have been put into the environment.
First of all, you don't know how much it will cost. Do you know how many people are dying or living? Is climate change killing people, or is it saving lives?
Climate change is obviously killing people, Stuart.
How many people is it? How's it killing them?
It's killing them through the air that they breathe, the pollution that they absorb, the lung disease, the heart disease. Listen, Stuart, I'm delighted that you're bringing all the contents of your Facebook page to the programme. But the question that I'm asking is,
you don't know anything about
why do you think Rishi Sunak has done this? And the answer is
for politics,
to delight people like you. And my question is, why is he prioritising you over Ford Motor Company and the environmental lobby?
So I think Labour will follow it.
Listen, if I say what time it is and you say it's raining outside, the conversation becomes slightly frustrating. Why is Rishi Sunak prioritising you and your opinions and insights and expertise over both Ford Motors and the environmental lobby?
Because he's being realistic, I guess.
OK. Because Stuart knows better.
No, James knows better. You don't even know how much it's going to cost.
I am following the lead of both the environmental experts and the motor lobby. So what is it?
You haven't even looked at the cost of the... That's how sincere you are.
Here's the question. Final time. Why is Rishi Sunak prioritising Uncle Stuart's Facebook page over both Ford Motor Company and the environmental... and 90-odd% of scientific consensus?
What is the consensus?
The question is, why is Rishi Sunak...
You're throwing up a lot of straw men.
Why? OK, the consensus is people qualified academically to investigate this area, all arriving at very similar peer-reviewed conclusions. So the question is...
Do you know what the IPC said? He said climate alarmism is dangerous.
If my peacock laid an egg in your garden, who would it belong to? So here is the question. Here is the question, Stuart. Why is Rishi Sunak prioritising you and your internet...
Not me.
Yes, you, because you're here as the representative... You're here as the representative of people who like this policy. Why is he prioritising you over Ford Motor Company and pretty much every environmental scientist in the... Please let me finish the question. Why is he prioritising you over the Ford Motor Company and pretty much every environmental scientist in the world?
He's following every other European country.
No, that's not the question I asked you.
Because it's a silly question. It's a false question.
It's a really good question. It's a brilliant question. It's a brilliant question.
You're the anti-vaxxer because you're refusing to
you're
go
the
into
anti-vaxxer.
detail.
It's a brilliant question. Why is he prioritising you? All you have to do is give me the detail.
He's not prioritising me. He is. He's being realistic.
He's being what?
He's being realistic. We wouldn't be able to make that pledge anyway.
And when when Ford Motor Company says that what we need from business is ambition, commitment and consistency, a relaxation of 2030 would undermine all three. Final question, Stuart. Tell Ford what they're getting wrong.
They're getting wrong as they listen to Boris Johnson, because it was his mistake.
Right.
In the first place.
So Ford have listened to Boris Johnson, and that's okay. No, I mean, I respect you. You finally gave me an answer to a question. So Ford Motor Company's attitude to this potential policy change is a consequence of them listening to Boris Johnson.
Well, obviously, he made policy, but you have avoided the subject.
No, thank you.
You haven't answered any question. You don't know the facts.
I know all the facts I need to know to ask you why. Okay, here we go. Boris Johnson. They listen to Boris Johnson. Ford listened to Boris Johnson.
You don't know how much it's going to cost.
Yes, I do. You told me it's going to cost £1.4 trillion.
Well, then, you don't think it's important? You went on for years correctly talking about Brexit and how that's going to harm the British economy, and you don't think £1.4 trillion should just be dismissed?
No, I think that Brexit is going to harm the British economy because all of the people who are in the business of manufacturing and producing explained why it would. And now the people who are in the business of manufacturing and producing are explaining why this is a very bad idea. But Stuart thinks it's a good idea.
The £1.4 trillion, right, what would you not spend it on?
Stuart thinks it's a good idea because Ford listened to Boris Johnson.
When you hold a radio,
I'm late for the news.
Do some research.
Okay, well, I have done some research. I've done some research into what. Stop saying £1.4 trillion as if it sort of closes the conversation down. It doesn't.
Well,
this is about.
I think a radio presenter that produces a programme should at least do a basic research.
Okay.
And know what a policy costs, and at least try to get the upside.
Net zero 2030 is supported by 90-odd% of the world's scientists, and now the motor industry. It is opposed by, for the purposes of this conversation, you. And if your answer to the question of why you're opposed to it is because of how much it costs, that counts as a vaguely valid contribution.
Vaguely? Okay. And it's not 2030, it's 2050.
We're talking about 2030 today. We're talking about 2030 today. We're talking about 2030 today and the extension to 2035. But anyway, I will take on board your contributions and I will look further into what it was that Ford Motors did with reference to what Boris Johnson had to say on the subject a few years ago. And I think we've answered or at least solved the problem of whose Facebook page we're going to be talking about for the rest of today's programme. Kate's in Radstock in Somerset. Kate, what would you like to say?
Hello. I don't live in Radstock, but I cover Radstock. Radstock is the area that I cover as a police community support officer.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been working there almost 15 years as a PCSO, and I do encounter little piles of these nitrous oxide canisters that the kids are obviously taking, and then they just sort of leave piles of them around the town.
Yes.
So,
I'm not unduly troubled by that. I'm more concerned about fly tippers.
Yes, absolutely. But what I do completely get that there are bigger issues in the world to deal with at the moment. But actually, these sorts of issues do affect our small communities.
How?
And because the kids that are hanging around on the street that are bored, a bit vulnerable,
yes,
they're getting hold of these canisters, and they're not only sniffing these laughing gas canisters, they're taking a bit of cannabis as well. So they're bored and they're just taking whatever they can get hold of, to be honest. And
yes,
it is a concern because then they will move on to other things. So I would never, ever I would be so concerned if my child started sniffing or inhaling any gas from these canisters, because I would be so concerned, what are they going to move on to next?
So we've already reached the nitrous oxide as a gateway drug part of the conversation, have we?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes. But it does affect our communities. It really does. It is a problem.
But how?
Because of...
So, I mean, you can say it's a problem because of other drugs.
Yes.
And you can say it's a problem because of rubbish. But,
yes,
I mean, the other drugs would still be there if there wasn't any nitrous oxide, and you know, we could just have a clamp down on littering and make sure they put their empty canisters in bins. And when you say it's affecting our community, I'm not quite seeing the signs.
Because we get groups of...
But we've had that forever.
I know, but...
That's nothing to do with nitrous oxide. I mean, you know, they might... every generation has a different thing that bored youths congregate around. This is just a new one, so that can't be it. That can't be the reason to ban it. If you want to ban boredom, then you might make some progress. I would prescribe this programme, but I don't know that younger people will necessarily be drawn to it. So you can't ban boredom. How does it affect? Because affect my community is a strong phrase, and I'm not feeling it yet.
Okay. Well, we get people ringing in about kids hanging around in sort of local car parks and on street corners or in shops.
When didn't you?
Yeah, it's just these canisters always seem to be part of the problem.
What problem?
Of youths hanging around on the streets.
But they always hang around on the streets.
Yeah, they do.
They always will, they always have. Shouldn't have shut the youth clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. But when we have people coming in to speak to us about what there's always new things as well coming in. There's like these other pen things that are making an issue. Schools, we've got, I can't remember what they do, but they sort of inhale them.
Right.
So the police have to really keep on top of what the kids are taking at the moment.
Yes.
So, but the nitrous oxide has been a problem for a long, long time.
You keep saying that, and I'm not going to labour the point. It wouldn't be fair, but I mean the problem is, as far as I can tell, littering, and something that young people who are already congregating in car parks and street corners probably and bus shelters, they are doing. But it's not the cause of the congregation any more than it's the cause of the boredom that it temporarily alleviates. I think increasingly, as we discuss this, it's a very, very odd path for the government to be going down. Steve's in Hackney. Steve, what do you think?
Hi, James.
Hello, Steve.
Very much agree with the substantive point that Gary Lineker has made. I agree wholeheartedly with it. I don't agree with I'm afraid I don't agree with his right to say it as someone who accepts even a penny from the BBC, even if he's a sports broadcaster, because the BBC is predicated on impartiality, goes right back to Lord Reith. It's in its DNA. If you take even a penny from the corporation, you have a responsibility not to... Hang on a sec, James.
No, I am. I will.
You have a responsibility not to espouse anything on any political point, and that's right, left, that's whether you're Richard Sharp, that's whether you're Lord Sugar, that's whether you're anyone. You have a responsibility. If you're in breach of that, you are having your cake and eat it.
I mean, that's your opinion. That's not true.
Oh, it is my opinion.
Yes, so I mean, it's always good to hear John Reith mentioned on the radio, but that's not really what his vision entailed, not by any stretch of the imagination. But you realise that would prevent David Attenborough from offering an opinion on environmental policy.
Yeah, I do.
And Ian Hislop from making jokes about the government on Have I Got News for You.
Yeah, I would. So
what would be left? What would be left on the telly?
Well, you have to be impartial. I mean, let's just say Zoe Ball, for instance, who was not a news presenter, was to start either saying comments for or against the government.
Yeah.
Would that be acceptable? I'm not sure it would.
Why not? On Twitter, remember, we're not talking about on air.
No, but
we're talking about on Twitter.
The BBC is predicated on impartiality, and Tim Davies.
But you keep saying that it's not the news.
He set out. Well, it is.
Steve, you can't keep talking over me. The news. No, you hang on a sec, mate.
Hang on. So
all right, but I'm just correcting a fundamental error in your analysis before you take it further. News and current affairs. Okay, how can you have impartial weather forecasts?
Oh, that's just being ridiculous.
No, it's not. I mean, it's why news and current affairs. You can keep talking.
Totally ridiculous.
All right,
to say weather is the same as politics.
News and current affairs. Yeah, but if someone tweets it's not raining when it is raining, are they in breach of impartiality laws?
You can't have your cake and eat it.
Steve, speaking in cliches, you can't have impartiality outside of news and current affairs.
You can. You absolutely can.
I just told you why you can't. That gets rid of comedy. It gets rid of natural history broadcasting. It gets rid of almost everything. Chris Packham's toast.
If you're using your platform to make any comment, whether it's right or left, you are in breach of BBC impartiality.
But you're not.
Fact.
That
is fact.
Okay.
Is that not fact?
No, it's categorically not fact because
it is fact. That's in breach of impartiality.
And that's why Gary Lineker's coming back to work on Saturday.
Well, because they're saying they're reviewing it. I'll be interested to see what that review entails.
Well, so it's not fact then.
And so but you haven't seen what that review entails.
I know exactly what the parameters are. I've seen the letters that were sent out to people who complained about Chris Packham and Andrew Neil.
You haven't seen the review. You don't know what those.
I'm not claiming it's fact, Steve.
Yeah, but you haven't seen it.
Mate, you just said but. You've turned into Vicky Pollard.
It was fact.
Fact.
It was fact.
Fact.
That was the fact that Tim Davie was saying that Gary Lineker has breached impartiality rules.
No, he didn't, and he hasn't.
They've now discussed
because he's a sports broadcaster.
No,
he's a sports broadcaster.
What about Zoe
Steve,
Ball,
I can't do this anymore. You can keep talking. If you're a sports broadcaster,
you haven't got any argument. I mean, that's the point.
Okay. Pause, Steve. Here is the argument. None of these impartiality guidelines apply to people outside of news and current affairs. Wait for it, Steve. Wait for it, Steve. Steve. Wait for it, Steve. Wait for it. Wait for it, Steve. Steve. Wait for it, Steve. Fact.
No. You're not bullying me into submission. You're not bullying me into submission. you listen to Tim Davies' argument over the weekend. He said there were shades of grey, and he says if you're closely associated with the BBC, you are.
It's 10:47. John's in New Cross. John, what would you like to say?
Oh, James, I'm so happy having this conversation. First of all, my stance on the ULEZ is totally unnecessary, and I'd love you to stop making out like it's a right-wing attitude that...
I didn't. I never said that.
Well, you kind of... Right,
no, I didn't. I contrasted between the scientists and the doctors who say that it's necessary and the people
on the MOT,
who didn't.
And that will clean the whole air of London with no extra charges.
This is why I don't do ULEZ phone-ins.
Sorry?
This is why I don't do ULEZ phone-ins.
Anyway, let me say something about Keir Starmer.
All right.
Keir Starmer, even though I disagree with this ULEZ thing, because once you've got LTN...
This is why I don't do them.
He's
off again. You just literally said you were going to talk about something interesting and you've gone back to this again.
All right, Keir Starmer, as far as I'm concerned, right, everyone thinks he's going to win. He's not going to win.
Right.
The guy is weak. His stance on this does not surprise me. I'm West Indian. I was brought up... But
you like his stance. He's stepped back from supporting the thing that you're opposed to.
No. Listen to me.
I am. That's how I know what you just said.
It does not surprise me.
Yeah.
And I tell you why. If it was someone else, they would look at the whole thing about cleaning air in London, right? In a different way. It's always got to be about money. There's a different way to do it. That's a lot fairer.
Let me read you some.
Let me know.
No, John, I have to speak now, John, because that's what people tune in for. Okay, here's a story from last month. Hundreds of doctors have urged politicians to stand firm on initiatives to tackle air pollution, warning that they see its devastating health consequences in patients on a daily basis. Air pollution is the single largest environmental risk to public health, linked to between 28,000 and 36,000 UK deaths a year. The estimated cost to the NHS and social care of air pollutants is estimated to be £1.6 billion between 2017 and 2025. So that's where I get my...
Can I respond to you?
No, you can't answer the question until I've asked it. No, that's impossible, isn't it? So that's where I get my information from. In 2 sentences, where do you get yours from?
My information is through driving, right? And living in London. Wait a second. Right, and seeing the problem, what's happening right now.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right now.
So you get your information...
Wait a second.
No, you keep saying, wait a second. I've listened to you talk a lot, and you haven't said anything remotely interesting yet.
Because you have a thing called LTNs.
Oh, he's done it again.
James?
So where do you get your information from about the medical establishment's approach to clean air legislation? Where do you go for your information, mate?
You see, you do this.
I know. It's so annoying, isn't it? I insist that you answer substantive questions instead of whining on about LTNs. Where do you go?
No, wait a second.
No, I'm not waiting a second. I'm giving you one more chance to answer the question. Where do you go? I go to doctors.
I am not disagreeing with what you're saying.
Well, good. Stop flipping it, John. I mean, honestly, it's as if you decided today to prove to everybody listening why I have such historical antipathy to conversations of subjects like this. I did a 22-minute introduction trying to steer clear of the rocks onto which you've just steered our collective vessel. It's a conversation about Keir Starmer's approach to politics. You don't like him because he changes his mind. He's just changed his mind to agree with you. But LTN. Rob's in Rotherham. Rob, what made you pick up the phone, mate?
Because I'm just bored of this whole rhetoric about HS2 ever being anything other than pushing the wealth from London. So I truly believe that HS2 was always meant to go to Birmingham and nowhere else. And if you look at the facts around it, you can see it. So, for example, I phoned in to say that in Doncaster, as soon as HS2 was mentioned, they built a state-of-the-art college. Now it's called the National College for Advanced Transport and Infrastructure. There hasn't been a single student at that college because it's never been used. In fact, in April, it was announced before it ever actually opened that they're closing it.
Okay, this is there. I'm slightly wary of. I don't know why you're telling me that.
Well, it was sold as this big thing.
But it's got a campus in Birmingham as well, not just Doncaster.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not coming to Doncaster. And like you asked earlier, you asked the question, have people's houses been compulsory purchased?
Yeah.
And the answer is yes. People up north...
No, I know, but what are you telling me, Rob, about today's developments? Is it good or bad? Well, hang on, you can't answer the question until I've asked it. Is it good or bad that they might be calling off this bit of it? Is it good or bad?
They've already called it off.
They haven't?
They have.
They haven't.
Right, OK, so in that case, then why have they already implemented a faster rail structure over the Pennines between Sheffield and Manchester?
The Birmingham to Manchester link, as of today, I knew this was going to happen. It's not your fault, Rob. It's just one of those subjects, isn't it? So the Birmingham to Manchester link, as it stands, during this conversation between Robin Rotherham and me, at 22 minutes after 11 on Monday, September the 25th, 2023, is going ahead.
Okay.
The suggestion this weekend is they might announce that it's not.
I think it's...
But Phase 2A and Phase 2B, Phase 2A and Phase 2B, which are the bits that you're referring to, have gone ahead and have cost millions, if not billions of pounds. So that's why I'm a little bit confused about what you think you're telling me.
Well, I just don't believe that it was ever meant to come up here.
Yeah, but that just sounds mad, mate.
Why?
Well, it's a conspiracy theory.
Right. Yeah, no, we can say, but that's the problem at the moment, especially for us that live up in the north. Everything's a conspiracy theory.
No, just the idea that they've announced it, built a lot of it, but never intended to open it. That's the only thing I'm calling a conspiracy theory about.
Up north.
Well, Birmingham's not even the north. Birmingham's the Midlands, mate.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying.
What?
Up north. Us up north. I've always known that train is not coming up here.
Right.
We knew that it was going to stop in Birmingham because if you look at places like Milton Keynes, Milton Keynes is literally now all the poor people who can't afford to live in London, and that's been pushed further. But
everyone, so why did they tell the fib then? Because all it's going to do is cause enormous grievance and upset. Why did they even announce it if they weren't intending to do it? I do think this is bonkers, but I'm going to humour you. All right.
Well, I'll give you a humorous thing then.
Is it from up north?
No, because I can clearly tell you don't think there's a north-south divide. Blah blah blah.
I certainly do think there's a north-south divide. Blah blah blah. There's a clear north-south. There's a huge north-south divide. I'm just wondering why, given that not doing it would cause such upset, why they announced that they were going to do it while always intending not to, Rob?
Because it makes them sound like they actually care about the North and not just London.
No, it doesn't, though. It does the opposite of that. If they announce it and then don't deliver it, it does the opposite of...
Because then, like Rishi Sunak did the other day, then they just come out and blame the working class people for it.
They're going to blame the working class people for not building HS2.
Yeah, because
how's that going to work? How are they going to do it, Rob, mate? You need to give your head a wobble, mate.
Okay, well, I'll give you an example.
Well, go on then.
The other day,
Mr.
Sunak went on national television.
Yes.
And he said, right, unfortunately, because we're poor, we can no longer look after the climate. It's not going to be a thing anymore, unfortunately. We're pushing all our targets back.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, I would argue...
Would you?
That should have been done in the Houses of Parliament.
Well, I would as well, but I don't know what I would as well, but that doesn't prove a north-south divide or blaming the working class for anything. I mean, you're just saying things now, all the right things, but not necessarily in the right order, Rob.
Right, so... What about all the money that is wasted?
Why do you keep moving around? The question's really simple. If the plan all along was not to open the Birmingham to Manchester link, why have they spent millions of pounds on it already? And why did they announce it at all, given that all it's going to do is give people up north the hump?
Well, because we're used to it.
That's not an answer to my question. The words "because we're used to it" bear no relation to the words "why did he do it?" All right. Well, listen, I'm happy to stand corrected on this, but in order to do so, I would have to understand at least part of what you were saying, and at the moment, I don't. Barry and Hayes, back down south. Barry, what would you like to say?
Well, the Tories need congratulating because they've accidentally, by terminating at Old Oak Common, levelled up Notting Hill Carnival.
You're being a little bit facetious. I hate to break it to you because it spoils your joke, but I think that the Euston bit is back on the table.
The thing is, at the end of the day, it's just a mess. And
yes,
the thing is, it should have been a water supply transfer line, not a train. Times have changed. The big companies, logistics, insurance companies, even the BBC have all left London due to the cost for their staff. I mean, we have the joke that basically you can't work in London anymore if you're actual proper working class, building trade, deliveries.
Can't live in you live on the fringes. The BBC haven't, just to be fair. They've opened Salford, but Broadcasting House is absolutely throbbing with humanity. And I know they've shut down White City, but it's not strictly true to say that.
The logistics of, I work in the building trade. I live in Camden. I'm moving out to Bushy, and the reason being, I save £1,000 a year in parking permits alone.
Can't argue with that, and your property will be a lot cheaper as well, presumably.
Everything's cheaper. No ULEZ zone. I'm outside the ULEZ.
Yeah,
that's another charge gone. I can go.
No, it's not. It's only a charge if you've got a non-compliant car.
You get hit by the parking if you've got a compliant car.
No, we're talking about ULEZ. You're not paying any ULEZ charges if you've got a compliant vehicle. Come on, you know how this show works, Barry.
You are via the councils on their parking because they hit you for a surcharge on your parking every time you park or go somewhere. With the new clean living zones,
but that's not ULEZ, though, is it? That's parking.
No, that's just they found another way to do it, and the clean living zone's the ultimate evolution of it.
All right.
Where you have to. So, it's just, I'm coming out of London. I've lived here for most of my life, and you can't work here as a small businessman anymore. The costs for the tenants, even the poor tenants I visit can't afford the charges
What phoning are you contributing to at the moment?
What am I? Sorry, come again?
What phoning are you contributing to at the moment?
The HS2 one, I suppose. It's like,
so what's you moving to Bushy got to do with Rishi Sunak closing the Birmingham to Manchester HS2 link?
Well, the thing is, one of my friends has an actual
I'm going to make you answer this question, Barry.
Okay. The direct effect...
the answer is absolutely nothing, James. I apologise for wasting your time. And I can't quite believe I've managed to bring ULEZ into it either. So I'll ask you again, what has you moving to Bushy got to do with the closure of the Manchester to Birmingham HS2 link?
I have family in Manchester.
That's not an answer to my question. That's random. That's random extra information. I've got family in Kidderminster.
It's going to be the longest replacement bus service ever.
Now you're back to the jokes. I demand an answer to my question. What has your mooted move to Bushy got to do with Rishi Sunak's imminent announcement?
I'm just saying. It's just like everything in London is a mess now.
You keep saying that, and yet if it's capable of generating all the money that you've just described, they must be doing something right. And if you look at the graph, sad though it is that people have to move out of their childhood haunts. Obviously, no one's going to be celebrating that. But some of what you say, much of what you say, is just categorically untrue. The whole idea is to make what you should have said is that HS2 would have made other cities more competitive with London, which means that the what did Stephen in Stoke call it? The engine would become much bigger. So you wouldn't have London out on its own as a generator of wealth, out on its own as a commercial hub, out on its own as an economic powerhouse. You would be able to spread that around the country a little more, which might, and it's a very big might, it might bring down some of the costs in London. That's what I would have said if I'd asked me that question. Neil is in Stanmore. Neil, what would you like to say?
Morning, James. How many rockets have been fired into Israel from Gaza?
I don't know.
Okay, that's 11,500.
How many civilians have died?
They haven't died because over the last 16 years, while Hamas have been firing rockets into Israel and carrying out suicide bombings and attacks on civilians...
Listen, it's a simple... I'm just looking for a number.
They've developed...
I'm just looking for the number now.
Very few is the answer, because
I think is it not none?
Systems. No, there have been, of course, there have been injuries, of course, there have been deaths.
By missile? I know there was a suicide attack at a bus stop, but single figures?
It probably is single figures. But
and how many people have died in Gaza in the last 2 months?
How many bomb shelters are there? How many bomb shelters are there? How many bomb shelters are there in Gaza?
Mate, there aren't any houses.
They've built thousands.
There aren't any houses in Gaza. How can you have a bomb shelter if you haven't got a house to put it under?
Because they have hundreds of miles of tunnels that have been dug by Hamas.
What is the reason for your call? Because what we've established so far is that there are between 10 and 20,000 deaths on one side and single figures deaths on the other. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? So where we go...
You rang me, remember?
Yes, I did. Israel is... Well, firstly, they are trying to wipe out the tunnel networks that Hamas have built with the assistance of the United Nations, who've allowed them to divert funds and building materials, to build...
Right, and your source for that?
They are there. That's what the Israelis...
No, your source for the allegation against the United Nations?
No, everyone knows that there are tunnels...
Oh, come on, mate.
Gaza.
Your source for the United Nations collusion in that?
Well, my opinion...
No, your source.
My source?
Yes. I have to challenge you, because the caller here said that if Al Jazeera is a source, I have to challenge people. So I can't accept Neil in Stanmore as a source on something, can I?
Okay, I have various websites, not websites, I have news information sites that are showing me that the entrances to tunnels...
No, specifically the United Nations collusion. Where can I look for that?
Where can you look for that? That's going to be a bit difficult for me to...
Well, then don't say it on the radio, Neil, please.
It's my opinion.
No, you have to say it's your opinion. You stated it as a fact. It's your opinion based on absolutely no evidence whatsoever.
Okay. All right, so let's look at the United Nations.
Before we move on, can we just agree that you said that with no evidence or basis in truth for it at all?
It is stuff that I've seen, but I can't necessarily provide the...
So there is evidence, but it goes to a different school?
Yes.
Okay, mate, you crack on.
Okay, so we have the United Nations who had this vote. Okay, so first of all, we have a situation in Syria a few years ago.
No, you're doing it again. Let's just focus on... No, I won't hang on, Neil, because we've already established that you're a bad faith caller, so you're lucky that you're still on. Let's focus on exactly what happened on Friday. Let's not talk about what happened somewhere else several years ago.
But it's relevant.
No, it's not. I want to know what happened on Friday.
Right, you said Britain abstained and America vetoed.
Mm-hmm.
Russia vetoed in Syria, where there were hundreds of thousands.
And the international uproar was enormous.
Was it?
Yes, it was. Sources: BBC, ITV, Sky, LBC. You crack on.
Well, I think that's limited. But the score is... Gutierrez has only ever done this once. He hasn't done it on any other conflict that's taken place in trying to stop a war that's taking place.
Because he's never felt that the need for a ceasefire was so obvious and acute.
500,000 people in Syria wasn't...
Yes, well, if we were to add up people being killed on both sides, like we did at the beginning of your call, the definition of war would apply, because they were killing each other on an enormous scale. So again, that doesn't work. Okay, here's a question: why did Switzerland vote for a ceasefire?
Don't know.
The most famously neutral country in history.
I have no idea why they chose to vote.
Why did Japan?
Don't know. I'm not there. I'm not in those countries.
Why did Ecuador?
What they think. Ecuador, because they are particularly holed up with most of the groups that are very anti-Israel.
Source?
Again, I would... I have my reasons and beliefs and what I've seen.
So, I mean, everyone does at Christmas. What are your sources?
As I say, I have access to news sites that...
No, the source for Ecuador being holed up with various groups. Not the source for the United Nations colluding with Hamas building tunnels in the Gaza Strip, because we've established you didn't have any. What's the source for the claim about Ecuador?
Again, just what I've seen from United Nations voting systems over...
But you told me they've never had a vote like this before. You said that. You said that 45 seconds ago.
There are votes the whole time.
So what was the Ecuador vote that you're drawing on now?
Specifically on now?
Yes.
No, I'm just saying that in general, in the past...
Go on, well, give me one example then.
They voted against Israel. I can't pluck off the top of my head.
Well, then you can't say it out loud, can you?
well, there are facts. You can look on the United Nations
I'm
website.
asking you to tell me the facts that you're referring to.
Well,
and how is calling for a ceasefire and an immediate return of all the Israeli hostages a vote against Israel?
How is it a vote against Israel? Because it's not allowing them to finish what they need to do, which is to demolish the tunnels that exist and the infrastructure of Hamas, who, for the last 16 years...
Yeah, so we're back there.
Israel.
Do you want to speculate on why Switzerland voted for the ceasefire? Because you have enormous levels of certainty built on absolutely nothing, so it's a bit odd when you say you don't know something. Do your sources not have anything on this? The news sites that you can't remember, or the Ecuadorian precedents that have slipped your mind, do none of them have any insights into why the most famously neutral country on the planet would vote for a humanitarian ceasefire?
Nope.
Nothing at all?
No, I can look it up.
And when you hang up in a minute, or when I bid you farewell because it's the news, the fact that every single thing you've said has absolutely fallen apart and crumbled won't have dented your certainty one iota, will it?
Nope.
About anything?
Nope.
And if I ask you how many people in Gaza have to die before it becomes too many, you will say...
I don't know, because it's...
You do know, Neil. You're Mr. I know it all, man. You must know. Come on.
I don't want any deaths.
Put a number on it.
There isn't
How many is too many?
I can put on it. There isn't a number I can put on it.
Well, we can say that it's not there yet, can't we? Because is it too many already? Or should they carry on?
The answer is they need to carry on.
So it's not too many yet. So it's not too many yet. When will it be too many?
I don't know, but my hope is
you do know.
At some point...
You do know.
I don't know.
We both know what your answer to that question is. The only mystery is why you won't say it out loud.
My hope is the women of Hamas at some point turn around and say, we've had enough. Right, we've had 17 years...
But you're not in control of that. You're in control of your opinions, Neil. You've just spent 10 minutes telling us all about your opinions and pretending that they were facts and evidence-based and knowledge-based. So you're allowed an opinion. In your opinion, we know that whatever the death toll is now is still too low for it to be too much. When does it become too high, in your opinion?
I have no idea what that number is.
You have no idea of your own opinion?
I have no idea of how many deaths there will be. I don't know that. You don't know that. Nobody knows that.
I can say there's been too many already. You can't. When will you?
I did say there's been too many already.
No, you didn't. You said they had to carry on.
I said...
You said everyone heard you. You said they had to carry on. So how many is too many?
I've said there's already been enough. Right, but I can't...
So you are in favour of a ceasefire then?
I'm not in favour of a ceasefire.
So there hasn't been enough. When will there be enough?
We need to stop the fighting. We need to stop the...
That's a ceasefire. Stopping the fighting is a ceasefire, Neil.
We need to stop the terrorist atrocities that have been happening for the last 17 years.
Yes. So how many deaths is too many in Gaza?
There isn't a number.
Well, everyone knows that there is, and you're just not prepared to say it out loud, Neil.
40 million, all right? It doesn't mean anything.
No.
Right?
But if everybody there died, would that be too many?
That is not my belief of what is going to be happening.
So that means that somewhere between now, I'm going to ask this question. Somewhere between now and everybody dead, there would be a line for you that should not be crossed. Why is it so hard for you to tell us where that line is?
Because they need to do what they need to do in terms of destroying Hamas.
So there is no line then?
No.
So everyone?
No, it won't be everyone, but...
Well, fingers crossed, Neil?
Yep, very much so.
It's 11:01. Josh is in Poole. Josh, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good morning.
Hello, mate.
I'd like to say, not only do I blame the Conservatives that have enacted Brexit, but I also blame the opposition and the left-wing parties as well.
Right.
Because in the wake of the referendum result, I think they should have offered their alternative Brexit instead of what they did offer, which was not really making any sort of promises or...
Are you sure about this, Josh?
Yeah, but I've always voted Lib Dem.
Yeah. Maybe in their case that your analysis is correct, but I'm pretty sure that Corbyn did say that he'd do some things. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have abolished freedom of movement. I don't know. I mean,
it was in their manifesto. I know that, but from what I remember of the campaigning, I remember the media being quite sort of critical of his approach and not really laying down exactly where he stood on Brexit.
Yeah, and I guess 52% of the blame for that lies with the media and 48% of it lies with him. But I just push you back to what persuaded you over the line. Was there a strong Lib Dem Brexit lobby? I don't know.
Well, on YouGov, there's some figures.
Yeah.
In comparison to the 2015 general election, I think it's 32% of Lib Dem voters voted for Brexit.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? What can I ask? Why? Can I ask what pushed you in that direction, particularly?
Personally,
yes.
The sort of economic principles of the EU, I feel like they're quite in favour of big business.
Okay.
And as a worker, I think that the labour market was too big. What Labour did in 2004, by not having any restrictions on immigration,
yes,
when every other European country did.
Well, that wasn't a consequence of membership then, was it? It was a consequence of poor judgment on the part of the Labour Party.
I agree. But at the moment, the labour market was too big, and wages were suffering. I mean, I work in the building trade, and we've been through austerity and all that years before Brexit.
Yes.
It's only now that my wages have sort of gone up.
Good.
And personally, from a sort of a socialist point of view, I feel like with a smaller labour market, you've got more leverage as a worker than you had before.
You've got 133,000 vacancies in the NHS at the moment as well.
Yeah.
Go on, tell me the positive of that.
Well, there isn't a positive. We should still be able
to bring in... You've got Bloomberg saying that a shortage of workers is one of the key drivers of the £100 billion a year hit to the UK economy at the moment. In many ways, I didn't know you were coming up next when I said, when people tell me that their own wages have gone up, I'm delighted on your behalf, but it's not really a corrective to a 4% drop in GDP, is it?
No. But you've got to look at these things with sort of like a trend in mind, haven't you? Like the Bloomberg says 300 billion over 3 years, but where in those 3 years did that 300 billion loss happen? Did it happen 100 billion a year, like they say? Or was it 250 billion in the first year and then 40 billion and then 10 billion?
I think they say 100 billion per year, but I don't know. I haven't broken down the numbers.
I haven't been able to look at it.
I don't know why you possibly need to. Let's confine it to the percentages then. The economy today is 4% smaller than it would have been. And the shortfall in EU workers is widening. And the bit I don't get, I can see that it's been good for you in the building trade, but the actual number of people coming here hasn't come down at all. It's actually gone up.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really about the numbers of people.
It was too many in your sector. In your sector, that was the problem.
It's about being able to choose where they go, because...
But we're not doing that either now, mate.
Because in the EU, immigration was entirely in the hands of business. Government couldn't really do anything about it unless it wanted to hire NHS workers.
Other governments did, though.
Other governments, had caps on immigration?
And financial requirements and the need to have a job in place before you could come here.
Yeah, a job in place, but that job could have been anything.
Yeah.
With a zero hours.
That's control. That's not what we had. You could specify that doesn't include 0-hour contracts. There's all sorts of things you could have done. But anyway, look, these ships have sailed. Would you vote for it again tomorrow?
Probably not, if it meant that the Conservatives were going to get into power.
No, just in terms of what it's done to the country, if you could undo it, would you vote for it again tomorrow? Your own improvements notwithstanding.
No, I wouldn't vote for this Brexit, no.
But you'd vote for the other one?
I'm teasing you a bit, Josh. I'm sorry.
Well, no, because you've had sort of left-wing Eurosceptics.
The Brexit that went to a different school. Yeah, no, you can't go back to Clement Attlee. You can go back, I guess, to Tony Benn and some of the arguments there about corporatism and big business, which I think Jeremy Corbyn swallowed wholesale without fully understanding. I had Mick Lynch in not long ago, and he was talking about nationalisation, full ownership of the railways, without any sort of requirements for competition or bidding. But Corbyn's manifesto promised a second referendum, I think. So it was there if you wanted it. But I'm going to file you under. I'd file you under. There was a great Brexit, but it goes to a different school. Josh, is that okay?
I think so. Yeah, I think we could have had a socialist Brexit. Personally.
So there was a great Brexit to be had, but it goes to a different school. Johnny's in Edgware. Johnny, what would you like to say?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I'm a supporter of Israel personally, and what they're trying to do.
Oh, that's where we part.
That's where we part. Well, I'll say the following: for any Israeli or any soldier that's shot anyone indiscriminately, and certainly a civilian, they should be held accountable. And there are many cases in Israel, where there have been terrorists who have been disarmed, and then someone in the IDF has gone and shot them still, and they have been put in prison in Israel. That's what happens. So the fact and I'm not sure, to be honest with you,
I don't quite understand what you've just told me. You can take all the time you want, Johnny. There's no rush.
Okay, thank you.
We're talking about terrorists in Israel.
In Israel, there have been cases where terrorists in Israel have been shooting, and Israeli soldiers have been present and disarmed them, and then another soldier has gone and shot that terrorist, and that person from the IDF has been held accountable.
Yes, but that's in Israel.
Put in prison. No, my point is
that's in Israel, where everyone can see it happening.
Correct.
Because there's no journalists banned. There's no journalists banned from Israel, so you wouldn't be able to sweep that under the carpet, would you? But in Gaza,
I'm with you. I'm with you. My point is that if someone has shot and killed a civilian, or in this case, Israeli civilians, and they were the IDF that's done it, and they have no justification and had no threat towards them, they should be held accountable. But when we look at the situation as a whole,
I'm going to have to be a little bit strict with you, and I hope you appreciate that that's fair. But you can't say I support something because I believe that something should happen. You can only support it if that thing is happening.
Correct. I agree.
And it's not.
All I'm saying is
it's not happening. They're not being held accountable. Nearly half of the air-to-ground munitions that Israel has used in Gaza have been unguided. They're literally called dumb bombs. There's no control or discretion over where they land at all.
There is discretion. They've been warning civilians to move from one side to the other side, and Hamas not allowing them to move from one side to the other side because they want as much. There's
no evidence of that, of them being prevented.
There's no evidence of Israel warning.
No, there's no evidence of people being prevented from moving. But even if there was, then telling people of a specific ethnicity to move out of their homes is pretty close to ethnic cleansing, isn't it?
Why is that the case if they've got Hamas terrorists hiding in their homes and
there's no Hamas terrorists in the Holy Church complex.
How do you know? I'm interested. You know
because the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem said so, and they'll be in daily contact with the people who've been shot dead.
They weren't there either. It's in a church in Gaza.
So then you've got some people. Then you've got people in direct contact with the Christians in that complex saying there are no belligerents here, and then people like you, with respect, Johnny. I won't wait a sec. I won't wait a sec because we can't keep spouting from one position to another. You can't keep saying they should be held accountable. They are not being held accountable, which means that your grounds for supporting what is happening have disappeared from beneath your feet in the course of a single... I know you disagree, but I'm just telling you what everyone else can hear.
Let me explain why. The general goal of what Israel are trying to do is they have to carry that out. If you had Hamas on your border sending rockets for the last 17 years to you, you'd also realise that they have to.
So there we are. So you are supportive of everything, including two women being shot dead by snipers.
No, because not at all. If particularly Israeli soldiers have gone wrong and done something wrong, that doesn't mean the whole general cause is a question at all. The general cause.
Well, what do you think a war crime is?
A war crime. There could be a war crime. This particular instance.
But that wouldn't affect the general cause, though. So how many war crimes do you think would affect the general cause?
I don't know. It's a good question. But on the whole, 90% of what they're doing is trying to get back.
They were shot in cold blood inside the premises of the parish where there are no belligerents. 3 Israeli hostages shot dead, waving white flags, having taken their shirts off. So what is it that you are? What is it that you think you are supporting when you ring in to me today?
I'm supporting the eradication of Hamas, and I'm supporting.
Well, how's that going?
Hostages. Why? Pretty well. I think there's probably 20, 30,000 Hamas soldiers or whatever they're called, terrorists, and they're probably doing quite well in getting rid of them. At the same time, they're trying to free up the hostages. One thing I don't understand.
But all we know about the hostages in the last 48 hours is that the Israeli Defense Force shot 3, and the wider analysis of the pursuit of Hamas leaders is considerably less optimistic than yours. Although I appreciate you weren't expected to be asked about it. So we can't claim that what is happening in the church compound in Gaza, or we can't claim that the oldest mosque in the area, the Omari Mosque, 5th century Byzantine church, which was destroyed earlier this month, St. Porphyrius' church, the oldest in Gaza, damaged in another strike in October, displaced people there, 57 disabled people in this compound, which was set on fire. They've now lost electricity. None of that can be justified on the grounds of trying... Let me finish, please. Let me finish. None of that can be...
It can be, and we've seen Hamas terrorists...
None of that can be justified.
In all of these places.
So if Hamas are hiding in a building full of disabled people, you support Israel bombing that building and killing everyone in it? So what do you support, Johnny?
To fight those Hamas people.
So what do you support?
The British did the same thing. Everyone, this is war.
And that's why the Geneva Convention was invented, to stop them from doing it again. So here is a building full of disabled people. You think there might be some Hamas people hiding in it, even though there is no proof, and everybody there... I'm going to finish, Johnny, and everybody there says there isn't, and you support bombing it and killing everyone in it. As long as when it turns out there were no terrorists in there, as long as everybody is held to account, Johnny. Am I right?
How do we know? How do you know there are no Hamas terrorists? We've seen them hiding in schools, in churches. We've seen it.
So you are. Why are you arguing with me? So you do support bombing a building full of disabled people because there might be some Hamas terrorists in there?
I don't. I support I support trying to shoot terrorists within a building like that. Otherwise, you could say... Otherwise,
the Patriarchate said that earlier on Saturday, an Israeli tank fired on part of the church compound with 54 disabled people inside. It caused a fire that destroyed the building's generator, the only source of electricity, and some of the disabled people can no longer use their respirators.
That's very sad. It's a terrible,
Isn't
tragic...
it just, Johnny? It is indeed.
But whose responsibility is... Who started it? Was Israel firing on Hamas on the 6th of October?
The person that fired the tank is responsible for that. And the people that fired the guns on October the 7th are responsible for what they did. But if you want to argue that Hamas is responsible for what Israel is doing, then you put yourself in the same intellectual position as the people who argue that Israel is responsible for what Hamas did.
Are totally responsible for what they do, because before Hamas went and took these...
I'll say that again, because I don't think you heard it. If you want to argue that Hamas is responsible for Israel killing innocent civilians, you're in the same intellectual and moral space as people who argue that Israel is responsible for Hamas killing innocent Israeli civilians.
Why? On what basis?
I'm going to leave you to think about that. I'm going to leave you to think about that, Johnny. All right?
They've been firing rockets for 17 years into Israel.
Yes, I know you keep saying that like it's meaningful or some sort of mantra, but if you want to say that Hamas is responsible for Israel killing civilians, you put yourself in the same moral space as people who claim that Israel is responsible for Hamas killing civilians. And I think probably for you today, that's the most important lesson that you'll learn. Matty's in Manchester, appropriately enough. Matt, what would you like to say?
Millionaire man of the people Mick Lynch is showing his true colours now.
You know what nudge the needle means?
No.
Okay, it means that it's changed your mind about where you were on this industrial action.
No.
So it hasn't. You were against it from the start, and you're still against it now.
I'm against people on way above average wages claiming poverty in the first place. Above.
Boris Johnson had to borrow £800,000, didn't he, just to get through the day?
I didn't know we were talking about Boris Johnson.
We're talking about people on above average wages who can't cope on the money they're on, aren't we?
I'm talking about people in the north who earn less than £20,000 a year for full-time work.
Yeah.
The reality of these out-of-touch people in London.
Mick Lynch is the out-of-touch person in London, is he?
Does he live in London?
Yes, he does. But let's talk about
Does he earn over £100,000 a year? Has he just insulted the people of the north?
Which is set by his members. Let's talk about RMT members who are on much smaller salaries who voted for strike action. So I understand the effectiveness of the invitation for people who don't like thinking about things to focus on Mick Lynch, but let's talk about RMT workers on, let's say, £23,000 a year who have voted for this industrial action. Let's address them rather than the man they elected, the man they elected as their general secretary. So tell them they're out of touch and overpaid.
Well, I wouldn't say they were. They're entitled to do what they like. They're entitled to strike. But the fact that he's chosen these particular dates,
yes,
and some of the other unions have particularly chosen convenient dates to be the most spiteful, just shows how politically orientated these strikes are.
These are the most spiteful dates.
Well, I just think that he's not been in the news for a couple of weeks, so he sat back, weighed up the situation, and just thought, I'll get back in the news again now. So,
okay. So what? I mean, trying to disrupt the FA Cup final or the Eurovision Song Contest as the most spiteful act so far. I just wonder if you could address people listening to this who've had quite serious operations postponed as to why disrupting the football is worse than disrupting their healthcare.
I'm sure they're already disgusted at unions anyway.
They ring me in their droves to tell me that they support the industrial action even though it's affecting them directly. So just a quick word to them on why messing with the football is worse than messing with their healthcare.
The two things don't have to be compatible at the end of the day.
That's the question I'm asking you,
Mick Lynch is
your phrase was most spiteful. So, most means more spiteful than actions that might interfere with healthcare or important appointments, crucial appointments. I just, in your own words, why is the football more important than everything else that gets disrupted when industrial action is taken?
I didn't say it was.
You said most spiteful. So why is it more spiteful to interfere with the football than it is to interfere with anything else?
Trains and health aren't linked, are they, at the end of the day?
Of course they are. Football and trains are linked just as much as health and train. You need to get to the hospital, you need to get to a football match, mate. The only difference is you can't watch the operation on the telly. So why is it more spiteful to disrupt football than it is to disrupt, for example, a journey to a hospital?
The people who basically in the health service...
No, I'm asking you what your thoughts are.
My thoughts
on why football is more important than healthcare.
Like I just said, they're not linked in any way.
How do I get to the hospital on a train if the train isn't running, Matt?
You ring an ambulance, but they're all on strike, so you can't get one.
No, you don't ring an ambulance. You don't ring an ambulance for a scheduled appointment, Matt. Don't start lying, Matt. That doesn't help either of us. How do I get to my hospital appointment, my scheduled hospital appointment in a non-emergency scenario, on a train if the trains aren't running?
You ring an ambulance or you get a lift.
No, you don't.
And like I said,
you can do that to the football.
Totally separate entities.
Why can't you get a lift to the football?
The clubs themselves will probably put coaches on to circumnavigate.
So the football is going to be disrupted less. It's going to be disrupted less than the healthcare.
I'm not bothered whether the football's affected at all. I'm bothered that Mick Lynch is a con man and he's a media opportunist and people like you defend him.
I'm not defending him. I'm just asking you really simple questions that you can't answer.
I answered them.
No, I'm sorry, that you can't answer sensibly or substantively.
And train companies are not the same thing.
Okay, Matt. Have you got a ticket? Have you got a ticket for the game?
No, I don't go to London. I don't like it because of people like you.
What if I promised to stay at home?
You could literally go anywhere in London and I'd avoid it.
OK, Matt. Have a lovely weekend. Love to the family. Francesca is in Barnet. Francesca, what would you like to say?
Good morning to you, James. I have to say that I find that the 20% increase on the school fees of the VAT is terrible. It's really difficult for middle class parents like myself who have good jobs but perhaps not quite good enough to already afford them with the cost of living crisis, with the mortgage rates going up. It's basically pricing people who typically went to these schools out. And I went to one of these schools from the age of 5 all the way up to 18. My parents were working class, and they, managed to get the money together to send me and my sister to a private school. Fast forward all these years, I've managed to have a great education thanks to them, university, and a very good career. And my husband and I would struggle.
But this is the point where I say, with my tongue in cheek, I don't want to heck to you, but then this is the point where I say, as a right-wing radio presenter, that, well, sadly, your career's just not good enough, is it? So you're going to have to get a better job if you can't afford the school fees. Because I've heard people say that about parents who can't feed their children, so there's absolutely no problem saying it to people who are just worried they may not be able to afford private education. Have you thought about getting fewer tattoos, Francesca?
I don't have any tattoos.
Okay, what about cancelling the Netflix subscription?
Well, we've thought of everything, and I think, the thing that people would struggle to believe is that, I'm a solicitor in the city. I earn, a very good salary compared to some. It's unbelievable for some people to think that, it would be difficult for us. I mean, yes, we can do it, but it would just be increasingly difficult. An extra 20%, is actually a lot of money.
But you're not hearing anything that I'm saying. It is. I mean, if I just simply apply the rhetoric of not being able to afford things that most people would consider to be essentials, and the country that we live in, the ecosystem that we inhabit, those people are routinely told that it's their fault they can't afford things. So the idea that I'm supposed to muster up reserves of sympathy for people worried that they may not be able to afford to continue to privately educate their children, you must see on one level how ridiculous that is.
I do see how ridiculous it is. I definitely take your point on board. But what I think you're missing is that, it's very different. You're talking about two very different things. Do I agree that we should tell people
we're talking about an epic unfair privilege versus the most basic of essentials.
Yeah, you see, I disagree with you when you say that it's a privilege and that people get ahead in life. And the reason why I say that is because I look at the job that I'm in, and I look at some of my colleagues that I work with, and they haven't had the
93% of them.
Well, but
93% of them went to state school, did they?
I don't know the percentage. I'll be honest with you.
I do. But it's nowhere near 93%. Let's just look at High Court judges. You're a lawyer, so you'll know what percentage of them went to state school. Is it just a coincidence, or the state or the private schools just somehow magically attract the most gifted future lawyers?
But I think that to go to a good private school where people are becoming High Court judges who are extremely bright people...
No, they're no brighter than the people at your local comprehensive school.
But you have to take... No, but some of these... James, like some of these schools, you have to take entrance exams to get in. So
and some of them you don't.
You can't go.
Yes,
exactly.
but there's people at the local state school who would get in. But their parents can't even dream of paying the fees. This is the bit of the conversation that I find most surreal. If it doesn't bestow an unfair advantage, why are you paying for it?
For all the other things that come with it, the amazing facilities that they have at these schools, the sports grounds that they've got, the music. If your child, let's say, isn't particularly academic, then
they might find something they can do in the future that's not based on academia. That's an unfair advantage to the kid over the road who's not particularly academic, who's not going to the school. Listen, I'm in the same boat as you, although I'm in exactly the same boat as you. But this determination to deny that it's unfair just fascinates me. Of course it's unfair.
But that's just the way the whole system is built, isn't it?
Yes, it's an unfair system. But why are you so keen to deny that it's an unfair advantage? Why do you need... Because I'm comfortable saying it's unfair.
Because I don't see it. I mean, in my line of work that I do, I don't see it as an unfair advantage. If I had it right in front of me, then I would say, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I don't agree with private schools.
I don't understand what we're saying now.
Why not?
If you had it right in front of you, you'd say it was unfair, but in your line of work, you don't think it is.
I don't think it's because not everybody around me also went to a private school, and yet they're doing
for it
the same
not to
job
be,
as I am.
back to the numbers again, for it not to be an unfair advantage in your high-flying city job, you would need to have 93% of your colleagues state-educated for it not to have bestowed an unfair advantage on the privately educated contingent.
But I think it's also a choice that every parent makes, isn't
It's not, no, it's not a choice that every parent makes. It's a choice that every parent who can afford it makes.
That's true. I take your point there. That is true. But why do you have to penalise us even more if we want to make that choice for our children?
Because it entrenches an unfairness at the heart of our society. And it's not. Why is it penalising you? It's a great privilege. If you have to pay more, it becomes an even more rarefied constituency that you're a member of.
I think it's important for a lot of people that to correct the assumption that a lot of children that go to these schools have, millionaire parents.
No one said that on this show. No one has even suggested that on this show. In fact, I spoke about my own father who couldn't afford it, really, but somehow managed to cobble the cash together. So I'm afraid that cliche doesn't wash here either, Francesca.
They did this morning on Nick Ferrari's show.
Well, I'm not responsible for what happens on Nick Ferrari's show.
But I'm just saying that I'm just making the point that not everybody, if some people think that an extra 20% isn't actually going to have a big effect on a lot of people. Of course it is. Of course it is going to have a big effect. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it. But it is. We're coming round in circles, and the biggest circle of all is your reluctant stroke refusal to admit that it's an unfair advantage, even as you pay significant sums of money to secure it for your children. I just think it's a choice as opposed to an unfair advantage, but we can agree to disagree.
No, we can't, I'm afraid, because it isn't. That's a bit like saying that's an apple and you say it's a pear and then we agree to disagree. It's a bloody apple, Francesca. It's an unfair advantage. Otherwise you simply wouldn't be paying for it. You are paying to give your children something that is denied to children, 90% of children in this country. You just are.
You give it to your children
Absolutely,
as well.
And I'm telling you it's an unfair advantage. Why have you got a problem admitting it?
But if you feel that way, though, why do you do it?
Because I don't want your children to have a monopoly on that advantage. I want mine to be in the game as well, just like my dad wanted me to be in the game. I'd rather the advantage didn't exist.
But you can't change that unless we live in a communist society.
Oh, really? So every country where there's no private education is a communist society, is it?
No, I don't mean it like that. Sorry.
How do you mean it then?
I just think that the other countries that have amazing state schools, which you're absolutely right to have pointed out earlier, I think that their whole taxation system and the way that they deal with things is very different.
No, it's not.
I don't agree with...
Finland just abolished it. Right. Finland just abolished it cold. Just took a decision one day, we're not going to have private schools anymore.
But I think unless the government actually takes a bigger decision...
Well, that's what the government is doing when it's a Labour government. It's introducing a 20%, which reduces the amount of people enjoying this massively unfair advantage. And the lower that number gets, the better society and the fairer society becomes.
And where are all the children that, come out of private school to go into state school? Where are they going to go when there are no places for them?
There are loads of places. Schools in central London are closing. Primary schools have got a huge shortage of new children starting, to the point that many schools are closing. And you won't find anyone in the United Kingdom that can't find a place in a school for their child. So you don't need to worry on their account.
I do think that there are lots, especially in the area that I am. I'm speaking of secondary schools that genuinely don't have extra places, and children don't have places to go.
Okay, well, if we end up in a mythical future where children are roaming the streets unable to attend school, then that would be the responsibility of government. But it's not an argument for continuing the perpetuation of a hugely unfair advantage that we secure for our children by dint of being wealthy. In fact, if you want a fair society, it should be the children of the poorest parents that go to the very, very best schools, and then the future would become more equal for everybody. I'm not sure I can help you any more than I have already, but I'll tell you one thing for nothing. It's an apple. Dan's in Newham. Dan, what would you like to say?
Hey, James. So I just wanted to... I think you made a good point about Peter Oborne and his piece on Keir Starmer, because I think it shows if he's lying and being dishonest in opposition... I think it's only going to get worse when it gets to government.
Fair point. What lies, just for people who don't follow stuff as closely as you, what are you categorising as a lie?
So his pledge to bring industries into public ownership, like railways, water nationalisation and stuff like that. He seems to have abandoned now.
And his explanation for that?
There's been none.
Well, there has.
Tell me.
Well, I'm not here to make the point. I'm here to sort of ask you your reasoning. If you're unaware of the explanations, I mean, part of it is to do with the fact that the compensation that you'd have to pay to the companies that currently owe them is cripplingly high, which makes a fair point on why did he make the promise in the first place. But the explanation of why he's abandoned it is something you should probably have researched before ringing in.
I understood he made the economic argument for it, but I think the case remains the same. If you pledge something and then break it, it doesn't really matter what.
Oh, it does if you explain.
Okay, well, I don't think it's justified because, we can have the argument against whether you believe in public ownership or not. I think there's a strong case for it. It's very popular amongst people. You've seen there's leaked emails between the water companies and the Labour head office, and it seems quite clear that they are, in cahoots. They don't want to bring nationalisation. So that's one point.
Let's pick up on that. Rachel Reeves explained, I think, didn't she, not Starmer, that the billions of pounds it would cost to nationalise things in the first instance was just not going to be able to be compatible with their fiscal rules. Again, you can make the point that they shouldn't have made the promise in the first place, but then you go back to the huge shift, not just inflation, but of course Liz Truss's little adventure in Downing Street, completely changing the pitch upon which that pledge was made. I mean, listen, I think you are unreachable on this, but for an objective person, the explanation is it's gone quite far towards justifying the decision, and they haven't ruled out future nationalisation of water companies. Labour MPs queuing up after it looked like Thames Water was going to trickle over the edge. Warning that taxpayers may end up paying for those debts anyway. So I think you've slightly misrepresented the Labour Party's position, Dan.
Okay, to move on, another point that Peter Oborne made, I thought was great, about the suppression of democracy within the Labour Party. So you see people, like Mayor Driscoll, for example, who's been elected as a Labour mayor, just being banned from the shortlist, for example.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, it's all about the manager picking the team, isn't it, though?
It seems like you're making excuses for Keir Starmer, to be honest.
Yeah, I am.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Well, maybe
not excuses, mate. Explanations.
Yeah. Well, no, it sounds like you're making excuses.
Okay, so how is it not the manager? How is it not the manager picking the team?
Well, Labour's meant to be a democratic party, right? And if you believe in democracy, then you believe members should have a right to stand. As long as they
he does have a right to stand, but just not on Keir Starmer's team.
He was elected by members.
Keir Starmer is the manager.
He was actually denied standing. Okay, if you believe in that top-down...
I'm being the devil's advocate, Dan. I'm just being the devil's advocate, Dan. You're making points, and I'm responding to them.
I don't think you're making...
Shall we move on to another one?
Very good. Yeah, okay, let's move on to another one. Again, brought up by Peter Oborne.
Have you got any of your own thoughts?
Well, I think he makes great points, so let's carry on with these.
So no, you don't?
Well, I do. Okay.
Go on then, give me some of yours. Give me some homegrown wisdom.
Okay, so how about Keir Starmer's close links with MI5, MI6?
Oh, there we go.
Okay. What's wrong with that? That again, Peter Oborne.
Okay. So not you.
Because you don't want to talk about that.
No, tell me about Keir Starmer's close links with MI5 and MI6 then.
Well, I think it's a good point when it comes to foreign policy, if you're having a big influence from MI5 and MI6.
But what are the links?
I can't remember the names, but it's quite...
Well, just give me some evidence. Well, what is it that you're talking about? Live on national radio.
Okay, maybe because I think Peter Oborne would explain it better. Maybe you can invite him onto your show.
But you're here to tell me about these links with MI5 and MI6.
So just meeting up with people for dinner.
Gosh, down with that sort of thing.
Well, I do think...
So you don't think a future Prime Minister should communicate with security services?
No, not on a personal basis, with off-the-record meetings, no.
Right. So what, they should do it all on live television?
Again, you sound like you're making excuses, James.
No, you sound like you're making a fool of yourself.
You sound like you're making a fool of yourself.
No, you sound like you're making a fool of yourself.
Okay, I mean...
Jeremy Corbyn fan, is it, Dan?
Well, I was, but do you know what?
There's a surprise. Tell me again about the links with the secret links with the security services that you know about.
How about you maybe
get
Peter O'Bourne on your show? Because at the end of the day...
Dan...
Every valid point I brought up, you've made an excuse.
No, I've offered you an explanation. Let's run through them again. So they haven't completely ruled out nationalisation of the industries that you listed. And the reason that they've given for pausing or reconsidering is the complete change in the economic landscape and the imposition of their quite well-established fiscal rules.
Okay, so
in the context of which candidates are going to stand, there's definitely room for argument. And you, possibly people could have made your argument a little better than you did. But the idea of a manager picking his own team is one that many people will be fairly comfortable with. And then when it comes to the links with MI5 and MI6, the leaflets that you're desperately leafing through that everyone can hear, you probably should have read before you rang in.
Well, I mean, it seems like you've just brushed over every reason I've given.
I've just literally gone back over it and explained in some detail.
So, as a Democratic Party, why do you think it's a good reason?
I've got to go to the news now, Dan, but I'll allow you. Go on, ask me the question. As a Democratic Party, why do you think it's a good reason for what?
To suppress democracy and ban people from standing just because they don't have the same views as you, even though they might be legitimate.
Because it's the party's views that are going to be examined and fought upon the next election.
So you don't believe?
So you can see what happens when a party is riven with people that don't actually want the leadership to win. Dan, you've just shown everybody listening what that sounds like.
Okay, all right. Well, James, I know you're Starmer fanboy, so let's leave it at that. Yeah.
But let's just to be absolutely clear that you understand how well this has gone for you. You've just demonstrated to everybody listening what happens when you have people within a party movement who don't want it to succeed. So that explains why Starmer has taken a stand on some selection issues. Do you understand that, mate? Or do you need Peter O'Bourne to explain it to you?
I get it that you don't have any criticism of, or will allow any decent criticism of Keir Starmer.
Well, you missed the opening of the programme then.
I get it.
What time did you tune in today?
Do you know what? Have a good day.
What time did you tune in? Because you missed all the criticism.
It doesn't matter.
At 10 o'clock. Scale of 1 to 10, how well has this gone for you, Dan?
11.
There you go. Jeremy Corbyn fan in a nutshell. Moses is in Ealing. Moses, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. I'm actually in here in support of Mr. Sunak.
Excellent.
There's an election next year.
He
needs to do party management.
He does.
He doesn't have the whole party on his side. Boris Johnson is, like the gentleman said beforehand, he's popular with the party base. What do you want him to do, Mr. O'Brien? What do you want him to do? Just throw the bathwater out?
I want him to prioritise the country and Parliament over party management, Moses.
Well, then we shouldn't have political parties, then, should we?
Just expand on that point a little.
Well, the point is...
let me remind you what you're expanding on. You're explaining why we shouldn't have political parties.
Yes, we shouldn't have political... Well, if the argument is that we should put country before party management...
The Prime Minister should do that.
Yeah, I understand that, but he still has... We elect parties, we don't elect the Prime Minister.
No, he is the Prime Minister, and I'm suggesting he should put parliamentary sovereignty or, simply the protection of the Select Committee system. As Prime Minister, he should put that above party politics or party management. And your response was saying, well, then we shouldn't have parties. And I just want you to explain that a bit more.
Yes. The point is as follows. He is the leader of a political party.
Yes.
You didn't vote for him. Did you vote for him? I didn't vote for him. He got there by being the leader of the political party.
Yes.
So for him to continue to be a leader of the political party, he has to lead the political party into an election.
Yes.
And he won't be able to lead the political party into election if he puts a sword, using a sword analogy, puts a sword right through the Conservative Party by antagonising the swivel-eyed loonies.
But Moses, it was his resignation as Chancellor that finished Boris Johnson off as Prime Minister, and Boris Johnson isn't even an MP anymore.
No, but it's the effect of what will happen if he votes against Boris Johnson.
No, but his resignation as Chancellor finished off Boris Johnson.
I understand that.
Right. So he's already run a sword through Boris Johnson, metaphorically speaking.
Well, you're proving my point for me, Mr. O'Brien.
I'm sure I am, Moses, and you're going to explain how now.
Yeah, okay. Then after he got rid of Boris Johnson and he stood up against Liz Truss, what happened?
he became Prime Minister?
No, he didn't become Prime Minister. Liz Truss became Prime Minister because they chose Liz Truss over Sunak for getting...
No. After it covers a significant period of time. Okay. It covers everything that happened after Boris Johnson ceased to be Prime Minister. And after Boris Johnson ceased to be Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister. But let's go back to me proving your point, because
you're obfuscating.
Yes. No, I'm not obfuscating. I'm proving your point.
No, you're not.
Well, you just said I was. You just said I was.
Yeah, you are, but you're chosen.
So am I obfuscating? No, hang on. Let's just take one obstacle at a time. Am I obfuscating or am I proving your point?
No, you're obfuscating by missing out that list.
So when did I stop proving your point?
You stopped proving your point when you just ignored our Prime Minister for 56 days.
Right.
Like she didn't exist.
Okay, so let's clarify that. Liz Truss definitely exists, and she was Prime Minister for 56 days. So now let's go back to how. Let's go back to how I. Again, Moses. One obstacle at a time. Let's go back to how I proved. Actually, let's go back further. What is your point?
My point is as follows: if he does not do party management, and if he doesn't do party management, he will not be a leader.
Yes.
There's going to be a rebellion, and the Conservative Party is going to get rid of him by the autumn.
Right. So if he'd voted for the report yesterday, you think the Conservative Party would have got rid of him by the autumn?
By the autumn.
Okay. Why didn't you just say that when you came on?
No, but my point is this.
No, that was your point.
No.
Yes.
The point where you agree with me. No, hang on a minute. Allow me to speak.
Well, I am allowing you to speak. I'm barely getting a word in edgeways.
Yeah, when he stabbed Boris Johnson in the back.
Yes. Moses stabbed him in the front.
No, he stabbed him in the front. It doesn't matter where he stabbed him.
Well, it does matter, because he stabbed him in the front.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So what happened when he stood up? He stood up for the party members. Who did they choose? Did they choose him or did they choose Liz Truss?
The party members chose Liz Truss. We've already established that, Moses. And after that, I think there was some racism involved.
No, I don't think so.
Well, you asked me why. You didn't tell me you were going to tell me why you think why. You asked me why.
They told you why. Because
stop obfuscating.
No, they stabbed him in the front.
They did.
Yes.
He did.
That's why they didn't vote for him, right?
No.
Oh. So why didn't they vote for him then?
Well, I told you.
That's the main reason.
The main reason. I told you why they didn't. They didn't vote for him because I think there was quite a lot of racism involved.
Yeah, there is that. You have.
I know.
A small part.
I know.
But the point.
No, a big part. A big part.
But you have two people. You either choose someone from Asian background or you choose a woman.
Yes.
They don't want to choose a woman either.
Hey.
No, they don't want to.
That's not racism. Being a woman's not a race.
No, it's a discriminatory behaviour. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay, Moses.
It's a discriminatory behaviour.
Well, I'll tell you what, mate. At least we can agree on one thing.
What?
I certainly proved your point. Steve's in Stoke-on-Trent. Steve, what do you think?
Good morning, James.
Hello,
First time I've been on here.
You're very welcome.
First of all, I've got a few points. First point is...
You've got 2 minutes. I'm warning you now, but carry on. Fill your boots. I'll be quiet.
All right. I'm not a Tory, but for once I agree with the government on this.
Good.
It's too expensive a project. It's become a white elephant over the years because of the cost. I may be wrong, but I believe the government has never published a business case that it had commissioned for this project, perhaps because it doesn't stack up.
I thought it had. I mean, it's generally business that have been speaking out in favour of it and against the decision to close it. Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Okay, go on.
The money could be. The money could.
No. The question needs to be why a business condemning it if it isn't of benefit to them, as you say.
But surely the money could be better spent on the rest of the network. We often hear of the Mayor of Manchester and
but I'm sorry, Steve. I'd have to push you. Why a business condemning it if it isn't a bad decision?
Well, I'm not convinced that it is a bad decision.
No, I know you're not, but that's why I keep asking you the same question.
No,
okay, let's not worry about that then. Go on,
well,
give me your other points.
Make my point,
yes,
please?
Absolutely, and I fully apologise for asking you to justify the points you've already made. I'll be quiet now.
Yeah. No. I live just south of the line from in the north.
Yes.
And we've got Crewe, Stoke, Derby, Nottingham, Lincoln, 3 big cities there. We don't get the investment. We are 30 miles south.
Yes.
The West Coast Main Line, as it is, large chunks of it do 125 miles an hour. What are you going to do with a few minutes extra in your life?
Yes.
My house backs onto the West Coast Main Line,
right,
on the most direct line to Manchester, and there are not that many trains on it, to tell you the truth.
Well, exactly.
The internet surely has had a major impact on meetings.
Yeah.
I retired in November and regularly used to go to London. Then it kind of stopped because they were all done, meetings were done via the internet,
Yes.
which was a great boon.
Indeed.
Capacity, the current system is a Victorian railway, but with pretty much 125 mile an hour trains, 110 mile an hour trains, and your freight trains. Far better to invest in that than in this.
Okay.
We've got going to Birmingham, great.
I am going to run out of time. I am running out of time, so I am going to ask you, with permission, if I may, why do you think that the business community is so disapproving of this decision when, under your expert analysis, it should actually be welcoming it?
Well, obviously, it would be good if it went there. But it's the opportunity cost of it. You can spend billions going to Manchester, and
for the final time, why do you think the business community is close to united in condemning it, including, of course, Andy Street, who used to run John Lewis, and his Labour counterpart in Manchester? So we're bringing two political leaders as well from completely different parties. Why are they all united in condemning it when they should obviously, as you've just explained, be cheering it to the rafters?
It will be, don't get me wrong, it will be an engine of growth for up there, but all I'm saying is, why not put the money across the network so you've got engines of growth across the country?
So it's a white elephant, but an engine of growth at the same time?
No, all right. Yeah, you took my word there, and you were right there.
Well, that's why it's important. That's why it's important to let me interrupt you. Yes, I know. I heard what you said, and you also now have heard what you said. And on we go. Josh is in Hendon. Josh, what would you like to say?
Hello. I'd like to say that I am quite a conservative-minded person. But
you sound very young for that, Josh.
I am.
Did you have a traumatic youth?
No, I'm a religious person, and I hold conservative values.
For example.
I believe in families.
We all believe in families. We all believe in families, Josh.
I believe in reduced migration for a country. A country needs borders.
How does that tie in with your religion? Which religion is that?
I'm a Jew.
But that's a religion that relies entirely upon migration.
Well, generally, migration's fine.
Migration for other people. You're against?
No, that's not what I mean at all.
Well,
it means. Well, I'm against too many. It's a numbers problem. That's not a religious issue. That's more of a just.
Well, I know. That's why I rather cheekily asked you to knit together your opposition to migration with your religious views. But anyway, you're conservative.
Anyway, so I'm conservative-minded, and I can't see myself ever voting Conservative again because they don't seem to stand for a single conservative value. They only have liberal things. They haven't torn down a single thing that Tony Blair put in. What have they achieved besides taking us out of the EU in a pretty shoddy way at that? Right?
They did that in order to abolish freedom of movement, and it might have backfired a bit for now, but you must be in favour of controlling our borders, which they keep talking about, surely.
Well, of course I am, but they only talk about it. They didn't do anything.
Well, maybe it's not. Well, maybe it is something that is rhetorically designed to appeal to impulses like yours, but they can't do it because it would actually be, as many people have explained for many years, it would actually be very bad for the country to severely reduce immigration.
I don't think so. I think that's based upon a view in which you look at GDP as the most important thing, and not.
I was looking at vacancies in the health service, actually.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the way our health service runs. I think it's
down with that sort of thing.
The whole thing seems to be...
So when did you last feel that the Conservative Party represented your anti-immigration, anti-health service, pro-family position, and also religious positioning?
Well, I never thought they completely followed what I thought, but I did have a glimmer of hope. I had a glimmer of hope, and it turns out I was completely wrong because I should never have trusted Boris.
You liked Boris Johnson?
I thought that he was going to...
But how does that tie in with your commitment to family values? I suppose you could say he's got loads of you could say he's got loads of families, but I sense that's not really what you think you're in favour of for religious reasons.
The problem was I never really looked into his personal life. I just looked at his political life.
It was very hard to miss, and, Josh. He had children. He had children popping up all over the place.
Well, I know that now.
You didn't know that at the time.
I didn't know that at the time.
Gosh.
But I thought if anyone's going to do something,
he's an immigrant as well, of course. He was born in America, I think.
Well, there you go.
And profoundly, I think we could all agree, profoundly irreligious.
Well, yeah, that's come out, yeah.
And supremely comfortable with immigration.
That's the problem.
So what did you like about him?
I thought that he was going to be against immigration. I thought he was going to bring taxes down. I thought he was going to do conservative things. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing. We got lockdown from him. That's not a conservative thing to do. We got all these things, and they haven't done police reform. Who do you like?
Who do you like in the car? Did you like Suella Braverman? Did you like the cut of her jib?
She was okay, but again, she didn't do anything. It's all rhetoric. It's all rhetoric. She doesn't do anything. These people don't do anything.
No. 13 years as well.
Yeah, it's like what I can't remember who said it, but these are my principles. If you don't like them, I've got other ones.
Yeah, it's a bit like, to be fair, it's a bit like you claiming that there was a religious basis for your opinions when really it's just anti-immigration and please let me pay less tax.
No, I think personally, I believe tax is theft. That would definitely.
Well, that is proving my point, Josh. Not challenging it.
No, I don't think so.
Well, of course it is.
No.
Well, I just said you want to pay much less tax, and you said, I personally believe tax is theft. How is that a challenge to my depiction of you?
Because you're asserting that this has nothing to do with my religious beliefs, and I believe it's wrong to steal.
Right. But, okay, no, you've got me there, Josh. It is absolutely wrong to steal, and that is a religiously based political opinion about taxation.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go, indeed. Well, I mean, peace be with you.
Thank you.
Fenn's in T-Bay in Cumbria. Fenn, what would you like to say?
Hi, James.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for speaking to me.
You're very welcome.
I'd just like to say I'm really glad to see Cameron back.
Good.
Yeah, personally. I've got a bit of an issue with your attitude towards David Cameron.
Fair enough.
And it's quite a common attitude I find in the country. He's kind of the fall guy and the bit of the bogeyman when it comes to Brexit. And I think it's just worth remembering that, you know, like you said, the first time he came into power, it was with a coalition, right? He dominated that coalition and he did the austerity stuff and brought all that in. And that was for a very specific reason, right? Which is, I bet you can tell me what that is.
Well, you want me to tell you what you're saying to me?
I don't want you to tell me what you're saying to me, but I can tell you. So they brought austerity in because our AAA credit rating was under threat, I believe. Is that right?
That would be part of the rationale, but no other country cut public spending back as far as we did, despite the fact that the 2008 financial crisis was global. And you'll remember, you don't need me to tell you that Alistair Darling and Gordon Brown had already got things back on a fairly good footing and we were moving very much in the right direction by 2010, but they undid all of that.
Only through quantitative easing.
Well, that carried on under Cameron.
Absolutely. Yeah. But that was not a long-term plan. The long-term plan was to get this country back into the black.
How's that working out?
Well, it isn't, because he's not in power anymore, is it?
Well, he had 5 years. He had 5 years. How long do you think he needed?
He had what do you mean?
6.
How long did he
6 years. 6 years.
That's absurd. Like,
okay. Why is that absurd? How long would...
You were expecting him. You're expecting a government to be able to come in and get the country back into the black in 5 years.
No, you are.
Is that what you're... No, that's what you just
I don't think it was about getting the country back into the black. I think it was ideologically driven slashing of public services because of free market ideology that makes them look at things like spending money on healthcare and education for ordinary people as an unnecessary expense. You're the one that's... Hang on a minute, pal. You're the one that said... You're the one that said it was designed... You are the one that said it was designed to get the... Well, you can keep talking, Fem, but I'm examining what you've said out loud.
You're doing the same thing, mate. You're not even letting me actually say anything. Like, what you're saying is what...
OK, so here's the question. How long would it have taken for David Cameron to get the country back into the black, do you think?
I can't remember because I don't have those statistics.
How convenient. And what do you think the major break?
I'm in my kitchen, mate.
What do you think that? No, you're on national radio, fan. What do you think the major breach with David Cameron's economic policies was that Theresa May and what's his chops, Boris Johnson brought in? What was the major change to austerity that they brought in? Do you think?
What was the major change to it?
Yeah, because you said he only had 6 years, and I'm pointing out that they carried on the same course.
Yeah, because Hammond and May decided to abandon that policy and stopped worrying, and they went further into debt.
This is absolutely astonishing.
They took our country further into debt.
Right.
And further into debt.
Yes.
And they've just carried on printing money and putting the pound further and further into debt.
But Cameron was doing that as well.
But only on with a short-term plan.
But you just told me that you couldn't talk about 5 years because it was too short-a-term plan to talk about, and now you're saying it was a short-term plan.
No, too short-a-term in terms of quantity.
Okay, well then, briefly, how long would David Cameron have needed, do you think, to get the country into the black, Fred?
David Cameron or anybody else.
Fantastic. Are you related to him?
Anybody else would have took like 15, 20 years.
Calm down.
That's the mess that we got left in.
Yes.
The Labour Party turned the NHS into the second biggest employer in the world.
And it had the highest ever patient satisfaction levels.
Brilliant.
Well, that is quite a good thing, isn't it, Fen, mate?
Well, that is a good thing, yeah.
Right.
But obviously that is a good thing. We want an NHS that works.
But there were too many people working for it, were there?
Well, there's too much money getting spent on it.
Right.
That was the problem, and we couldn't, as a nation.
So it had nothing to do with debt. Then it had nothing to do with debt. You just felt there was too much money being spent on the NHS.
Yeah, because that's money that was on debt. That was money that.
And they're now spending more than ever.
Yeah, because they're forced into that.
And they carried on spending year on year. Cameron spent more on the NHS than he did the year before. Every single year he was in power. But he's your man. Talk me through that in your kitchen.
Yeah, I will, yeah. Basically, like, the plan of Osborne and Cameron had a plan to get this country back into the black.
Don't change the subject. They spent more on the NHS year on year than they did the year before. So how are they cutting spending?
To get this country back into the black.
Well, you're going to have to answer the question, Fen, or admit that you've soiled yourself on live radio.
You're not answering my question.
Mate, it's my show. How do you explain a reduction in NHS spending when it went up every year?
How do I explain a reduction in NHS spending?
Is there an echo?
I can't.
But you just told me that's what they did.
Well, they did reduce them. I said that they tried to reduce the debt. I didn't say.
No, you didn't. You said they were spending too much money on the NHS and they had a plan to fix it. How did they fix it? By spending more every year.
Right, well, I don't know. I thought we had a problem with the NHS and they weren't spending enough money.
I'm going to keep asking you the question until either you answer it or hang up.
OK, well, give me a second. I'll have a look.
Doesn't work like that. That counts as hanging up.
No, I'm not hanging up. I'm still here. What was the question again that you want me to answer?
How does spending more money each year on the NHS equal cutting spending on the NHS?
It doesn't, does it?
Thank you, Fen. Have a great day. No, come back, actually. Give me in a sentence why David Cameron's a good appointment.
Why he's a good appointment?
There's another echo.
Basically, Cameron, is not responsible for Brexit.
Why is he a good appointment? Why is he a good appointment, Fen? These aren't trick questions, mate.
Why is he a good appointment?
Oh, my God, the echo again. Do you want to sit down? Do you want to sit down and try again in your kitchen?
Huh?
Why is he a good appointment?
Why is he a good appointment? Because he's a good politician.
Right, and the proof of that is...
He's the best Conservative politician we've had.
And the proof of that is his greatest achievement was...
winning 2 elections.
Right, but as a politician, his greatest achievement was, in policy terms...
In policy terms, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
And yet here you are, in front of nearly 1.5 million people.
Yeah, but I still think that Cameron's the right thing.
No, I know what you think. I'm just demonstrating you have absolutely no basis for it whatsoever. Live on the radio.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough, mate.
I know.
I think I haven't. If I had access to more statistics,
you've got access to all the statistics I've got access to.
I just said there, I'd like to go.
One policy success.
That was the same of hanging.
But just give me one policy success. Go on, one.
One policy success. I'm trying to think, mate. I can't think off the top of my head.
That's all right. Take your time.
I'll tell you one thing I did like. It's only a little thing.
Just before you say it out loud, remember people are listening, and this is the culmination of the whole call.
That's because you're ending it. You've dictated.
It's time for the break, Fan. It's 11:45. I've given you more time than anyone else today. Go on, give us the big win.
Don't hog the middle lane.
Pardon?
Don't hog the middle lane.
What are you having for lunch?
I haven't decided yet, no.
I hope it goes better than this.